Hello everyone, welcome back into another stream of not Genso Suikoden 2, but of our lore dives. But today is going to be a little bit different and a little bit special because we actually just got a bunch of new FromSoft goodies to look at, courtesy of the Nintendo Direct of all things. So whoever had new FromSoft exclusive announced on the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct bingo card. Damn, you're a better bingo player than I am. So, hold on, I need to fix my notes here because they're not relevant. Yeah, so before the stream, I was trying to finish rendering a video, but there's just way too many damn elements on it, so it took a lot longer than I was expecting. So, sorry for the delay. So, anyway, to recap what we did on yesterday's stream, which was April Fool's Day, we checked out Why Is Everybody in Elden Ring Blind by the Nameless Singer. Then we checked out my April Fool's video from a couple years back with why the Frenzy Flame ending is the best ending in Elden Ring, and then I gave the rationale as to why this is actually an April Fool's video, why I'm bamboozling people on that joyous of days. Then we watched Titanborn's Frenzied Flame in Midra, Elden Ring Shadow the Erdtree Lore 4K. So today we had a trailer that announced the launch of Elden Ring on Nintendo Switch 2, which I'm sure many people are excited for, other than the fact that it's probably going to cost at least 80 or 90 bones American. So yeah, a bit of news about the Nintendo Switch 2 pricing. We've learned after the Direct that the console itself is $449 American, which is, it hurts. And then we heard that all digital games on the Nintendo Store going forward are going to be $80, and then the physical copies are going to be $90. And man, that is a real punch in the gut, tell you what. So a lot of people are unhappy about that. I mean, on one hand, it makes sense that prices would have to rise eventually. I was just hoping a more lobster-esque getting used to the water boiling before getting up to $80 or more. So anyway, everybody, welcome on in. We have Iman, Mendacious Cat, Mortis, Jacapaka, I don't know, Elden Enthusiast, Hey Oceans, Weddy, Mr. Yada, Without Horns, and Chadwick already. FF6 debuted on the Super Nintendo for over 100, inflation adjusted. Yeah, but didn't the Super Nintendo also come with like a lot of goodies? I imagine like it obviously came with like the manual, but I remember Illusion of Gaia came with a shirt, a map / poster type thing. Games were a little bit more like, it was kind of essentially like a collector's edition of something nowadays. But yeah, not trying to totally defend it, but you felt like you got a little bit more bang for your buck with those older games. So okay. Whew, very excited. I'm out of breath for some reason, probably because I was playing with the dog and rushing to get ready once we all rendered everything. So, okay, the first thing we're going to do is check out the Elden Ring Rises on Nintendo Switch 2 trailer, because there is some new content on it that I'm going to discuss and share with you guys. Then I want to double check the Duskbloods trailer. I only watched it when it was on the Direct, and I tried to forget everything afterward immediately, other than what I was looking at on the website. So I'm really excited to look at that one again in a little bit more detail. Then I've had these two videos on my radar for a while that I wanted to check out, with The Alchemists, How the Erdtree Stole the Power of the Sun and Destroyed Its Realm, the Sun Realm Part 1. And then I'm assuming this one's Part 2, but it doesn't say that. The Gloam Eyed Queen was here all along, Elden Ring Lore Theory by The Alchemist. Then, because I apparently love being a masochist and always looking at everything relating to the Gloam Eyed Queen, I wanted to follow that up with Zafe the Scholar's Marica's Strange New Connections to the Gloam Eyed Queen, Elden Ring Shadow the Erdtree Lore Theory and Speculation. So, Platinum Chip, Zyro, welcome back in. Yeah, that's how I feel, Mendacious Cat, that on one hand, well, the video game prices have not increased, neither have our wages. It sucks. At least in the US. Alright, so let's go ahead and check out the trailer.
Peggy 16.
Oh, it's loud.
I have long
Can we turn that down a little bit?
lands between. This world is in dire need of repair.
So yeah, Elden Ring, that wasn't terribly surprising.
The
Maybe it's a little bit surprising how much power the Switch 2 has. Boy, hey. Come here. Here. Come on. There. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the power of the Switch 2, if it can run Elden Ring, is going to be a pleasant surprise. I'm a little bit skeptical about it. So we'll just have to see. I wonder if this is like a custom build that's a little bit weaker than what you'd get on the PS4 maybe. Or maybe the Switch 2 is supposed to have an equivalent power to like a base PS4 perhaps. I'm a little skeptical, but who knows.
Rays of grace that guide you through your burden.
So this is some of the new content. Obviously we have the Skidoo tree in the background there, the Shadow tree. Then this set of armor reminds me of the Demon Souls Remix Fluted Armor Knight set. And then somebody said that this kind of looks like Laph's set from Dark Souls 3, which I could kind of see that. So we're getting at least 2 new armor sets. This looks like a normal sword. I can't really tell what they're wielding. The shield looks different. And then this is the other big reveal, a kind of knockoff Mira type set. So... oh no, guys, does this mean that Elden Ring is the canonical sequel to the Dark Souls universe? God, I hope not. Oh yeah, and I should have said, the Lucatiel or Lucatiel's brother is in the Shadowkeep, the room with the 2 Black Knight archers. Because at first I was like, where is this? I don't remember this. And then... on a higher quality image, I was able to be like, oh yeah, we have like the Mesmer banners in the background and the sigil on the thing. And then I remembered where this was. Because at first I was like, is this where you fight Elmer? But like, that's not how that room looks. Is this a new area? I got really excited. But nope, we already have it. And so this looks weird. I can't tell if this character is female. It seems a little bit thinner to me, but also the biggest reveal here is that you have a reskin of Torrent with the Rhea Lucarian or the Cuckoo type emblem on. Maybe this is part of it. Whoops. With the Rhea Lucarian / Cuckoo crest, I believe. Yeah, it's definitely the Rhea Lucarian Cuckoo crest. So that's really interesting. Are we going to have our Elder Scrolls Oblivion horse DLC, which costs actual money, turn into World of Warcraft? The horseman in the dusk freaked you out? You're not hyped for him?
I have no doubt you will become Elden Lord. May you take the throne.
So this says 2025. We learned that the Switch 2 is going to release in June, which is pretty quick. I was really baffled that the Nintendo Direct didn't give us the price there, especially with how short the turnaround is between the announcement and the launch. Although I'm not terribly surprised that the turnaround is so short, just because, you know, this is like the little system that's been rumored since the days of the Bloodborne remaster almost. But anyway, $449 plus $80 for this already sets you at over $520 for a game you already own. So it's kind of a bit of a steep buy-in point, I think, for many people, but who knows? I mean, the good thing about the Nintendo consoles, at the very least, is that they all have a really great longevity. Like the Switch 1 has lasted for so long, but of course, you could always try to hold out for like a better model of the Switch 2 if they have like an improved OLED screen or something like that. So anyway, following that up with the Elden Ring announcement, we also had the follow-on announcement on Twitter or whatnot that the 3 armor sets that we saw are going to be included into the base games of Elden Ring. Well, hold on, maybe that's a misphrasing there. That you'll be able to download them on the other consoles, essentially. We don't know if they are going to cost money. The Tarnished edition of... or is it Tarnished Fades? Whatever it's called. This version, Tarnished Edition, Does seem to include Shadow of the Erdtree based off of the Skibbity tree in the background here, so maybe it won't be such a terrible price point at $80, but I mean, that's because it's included with the DLC, but still not great. 40k armor, you're in? Hey, Chadwick, yeah. You hope this gets added to the other version? So yeah, it should be coming. I just certainly hope it's not for even more money. And if it's really only these 3 armor sets, who knows? There might be more. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit more. I also wouldn't be surprised if we had like a couple more Night Rain tie-ins, but I don't know. And yeah, so this is in a way set to come out after Night Rain, so... Alright, next we'll head into something I'm extremely excited for, the Duskbloods trailer. So, bros, this caught me totally off guard. At first I was like, is that Dante? Zyro, you thought that as well? Okay, at least I wasn't alone with that. I've never really played Devil May Cry, so...
I give you.
Mr. Yada, you knew it was a FromSoft game as soon as they did a close-up of the hands. You can't explain why. Maybe it's that artist's intuition, like the hatred of drawing hands. Mr. Yada probably doesn't even draw.
My blood. I give you.
And then when I saw the embroidery on her robe, which was like red, I was like, wait a second, could this possibly be like Wheel of Time related? I didn't think so, but it does seem kind of reminiscent of something like an Aes Sedai would wear, although red would be the worst color for a lady to be embracing a man's hand.
My life. Turn, O wheel.
Oh, that might have been part of it. She said turn a wheel, and then with this and that, I was like, I probably connected the dots that way.
And transport him to a night of moonlight, to humanity's very dusk.
Humanity's very dusk. I'll turn this up. It looks really quiet for you guys. From Software. I was like, what? In a Nintendo Direct? And then I was like, what? Big Ben. Although I didn't really look at this little villagey, this shanty town, this ghetto down here. This looks like the Rayolukarian tombstone things, mausoleums, whatever you call them. Crypts. Yeah, so this looks very English, Bloodborne-y, and Elden Ringy at the same time. Although, to be fair, like, there's definitely been some reused assets from Bloodborne in the Liurnia of the Lakes location. Ooh, hey, look, we got a statue lady. Is that one of the Bridge Saints or the Divine Tower people? Maybe it is. So the real question is, do we access the DLC or another part of the map through coming beyond the Astral Clock Tower? Time will tell. Hey, Galaxy Dragon, legally distinctive Bloodborne? Exactly. And then it almost looks like it's like raining oil, or like rain is coming through the suit and becoming like brackish because of it. So Mortis is losing his damn mind because there was the train. And then we get a cathedral-esque type building with stained glass windows. Wait, is that... I think we've had this one before. This might be the Virgin of Paris. No. We've definitely seen this in one of the games, though. Oh, is this the one with the broken hands all over? Like the chapels in Redmane and whatnot? I can really tell that I'm going into super lore brain mode when I'm like looking at like the little embellishments on weapons and trying to see if we have any emblems or sigils on cloaks and crap. He has a gun on his back. Oh, I did not notice that. Wait, what is this? Is this like a crossbow? And I thought that this thing kind of reminded me of the Moog set a little bit. Gives Lies of P vibes. That's what I was feeling as well. I think part of it is because of like the steampunky nature of things. So this looks like it's probably the same bridge that we saw earlier. So I don't think we're on the top of the clock tower. Interesting. They look like there's real vehicles here, perhaps. Which I guess that wouldn't surprise me if we had certain other things coming on. Oh, wait. Let me look at that armor. Yeah, this is super Moog. Or on Spocky. Is this a sword cane? It kind of seems like it could be. So this dude might be blind. He was also wearing sunglasses. And I obviously don't take anything that I'm saying like really seriously. I'm just kind of like thinking aloud as I like piece through this here. This is so Night Rain. This is Night Rain 2. And this place reminds me of Irithil. Oh no, he's got the Balenciaga set on. Oh god. So this is more Chinese inspired, especially with that silhouette. I don't know, this is really cool though. I like the color. So we got that reused asset, but this looks like the Marica statue that we see in certain places. Oh, and then this dude looks super cool. He's kind of like got the quintessential Oni type mask, although it doesn't really look like a mask for him, like the Akuma type stuff. Yeah, so like the character design is already really exciting to me. I think this guy looks kind of goofy as hell. Like we have the Brotherhood of Steel at home type vibes. Rip my frames. Almost like a pig in it. Wait, there's like a protrusion coming out. Oh, probably for sucking blood. So that's the same thing that we saw earlier from a different angle. Definitely has Elden Ring-y type terrain features. First Cheongsam in a Souls game? Are we lower? Yeah, we might have actually been all the way down there. Or no, we saw that statue lady, didn't we? Yeah, so we were over here-ish, I think. That area. Big Ben. So is there like a hole in it? I mean, you could see through it. It probably has multiple holes. Wait a second. So probably got hit this way, and then an impact went through and was larger going out, because that tends to happen, I'm guessing. This reminds me of the like carriages which carried the coffins in Bloodborne. Bro, I got no frames. Those clouds, though? Oh, and then we have... Damn it, who was I about to compare him to? Oh, well. Wait, he's got like an orb type thing in his hand? They're floating. And yeah, so this is almost like the biblically accurate angel depiction, except it's not that accurate, but I don't know, this thing's really cool. Who pissed off the Majora's Mask moon again? Wait a second. What's going on back here? This is so trippy. This is super cool. I'm really excited about this stuff. Like, I really like the character design and enemy design, if this is an enemy, whatever you want to call it already. He's Carlos. Thanks, bro. This is the best shot with the swords. This dude, I tried to like zoom in a second, just like right now. This dude is very Christ-like. Is that supposed to be the same guy? Did this guy get crucified? Well, it's kind of hard to say. He's got another like firearm in his back though. So he jumps. Yeah, so this part definitely reminded me of Night Rain, if you're not so worried about fall damage. Rip Gravity, you had a good run. Oh, and then this part I was really excited by. So they had like a little cleaver in their hand. This almost looks like a hollow type enemy, like a kind of weak one. Almost like the jailers or something in the Profane Capital. Bro. And so like he was sucking, like, you can't really call this blood because this looks like darkness. But some of the secondary material from like the website or Twitter or something, I don't remember where I saw the post, said that what are they called? The Duskbringers? The Duskbloods are in search of the first blood, at least in the Japanese. So maybe that's why it's all dark and crap. And so this you can see in the background on the website. Seems like a big old elevator for something. Oh my goodness, I did not notice the reskin Basilisk the first time through. Maybe I was trying to post in the Discord and I was like, guys! And everyone's like, what? Man, I need some more frames. How does I buy frames? This almost reminds me of like the Materia Cave. They're blinded. They've got like the Christian finger hand thing going on with a book. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's what I thought. So it's almost like Passover-esque. Wait, where'd they come from? I was not privy to that. You're out there consuming the dark soul of man, apparently. Oh, did he just summon him? Her? It? Them? Her? She's got stilettos? 2 daggers? Oh no, those are not daggers at all. In leggings, that's a girl. Or at least type.
Close your eyes and contemplate now the moon, as befits the soon to depart.
Oh. Hey Mappy, how's it going? Nice to see you again.
Contemplate now the moon, as befits the soon to depart.
So that's a one-handed firearm. It's all on the left. And this almost looks like the cleric beast, but obviously has more humanoid legs. Looks like they have a huge great axe in their right hand. We got the left-hand path type stuff going on. Like a cross between Blythe, the cleric base, and maybe almost Amelia.
I pray that you are able.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about like the T-Rex thing that they spawn in, because I was like, man, this doesn't really look like a wolf. It almost looks more lizard-like.
Carrier of blood.
So that's a throw. Bro, this weapon looks badass. Come on, man. I'm pausing and stopping, but the frames, that's all I need to.
Of blood.
If I was smart, I would have downloaded all of this stuff beforehand. Wait, what was that? It's got like a necklace or an amulet on. Can't really see much more beyond that. Definitely like reskinned Bloodborne textures. Or repurposed might be better. Cleric Blythe. I like it. So hair or cape? Maybe a little bit of both. Oh. It's like a headless horseman, although in this case the horse is headless. Plus Maria on it. The Reiter Palash. That's wild. Tricorn hat. This is Bloodborne too. I feel like this is must have been what it was like to try to like decipher where Sasquatch was on really low quality film back in the day. If you look here, you can make out its arm, and this is part of the silhouette is its face. My man's totally... Wait, is this inside the clock tower? No, because we have another building there. My man's literally summons an allosaur. I was like, you gotta be joking me. Come on, man. Give me some more frames with that. Come on. He definitely grabbed somebody with that. Oh, is that the Chunksam girl? I think it is. Maybe it's a different person wearing a similar piece of attire, though. That one must be Werewolf Astarion. Shows Chakam. Bro, come on. YouTube, you're straight garbage sometimes. So that's the little kid from earlier next to the crazy moon. Seems to have crazy gravity magic.
Tears will flow for one, and one alone.
For some reason, this dude reminds me of Voldo. He's got an axe, at least. Not claws. Return to Lizard Brain, right? Buddy, now you're pissed this is an exclusive? Next big project letter has dinosaurs? The Duskbloods. He just got out of bed and grabbed an axe. So, I made a joke about this on a different server, but hey guys, look! It's a crow! It's a rat. It's a crat. Crat? Crot? Is this Lies of P? And it's very interesting that they lingered so long on the crat thing. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that because that just looks super cool. I want to watch it again this time without like pausing every 2 seconds. I was trying to turn on captions, but it doesn't have any.
My blood. I give you my life. Turn, O wheel.
Galaxy asks, do I think Sony and FromSoft had some kind of falling out? I doubt it. It could just all be money. Honestly, like my tinfoil hat theory is that FromSoft was just going to double down on reusing their same tried and true engine because they're cheapskates who don't want to modernize and they're not that great at programming. Sue me. And so they want to stay like on the weaker generations as long as they can, I think, until they like make a new engine or something.
And transport him.
Oh, could Duskbloods come to Smash Bros? Don't give me hope.
To a night of moonlight. To humanity's very dusk.
Bros, how wild is it to see the FromSoft frickin' logo next to Mario in the corner? What day is today? Is today the 1st? Yeah, they definitely had to wait till the second to make this announcement. I'm really excited about what the hell this dude is. Hey guys, I found my frames. I do think that looks kind of goofy, not gonna lie. It's the new Sigurd. Bro, the blood drinking got me pretty hyped. It's a terrible basilisk. I know what that is, even if it looks slightly different. Balenciaga.
Close your eyes and contemplate now the moon, as befits the soon-to-depart.
I pray that you are able, carrier of blood.
So you can block with weapons. Might not be super effective. It's Alistar!
The moon tears will flow for one,
Moon tears, he said?
and one alone.
Bro, this is just so hyped, though. Alright, so some other news about Duskbloods based off of the website is that this is supposed to be a PvPvE game. Now, I don't know if that means it's going to function similarly to the way that Covenants worked in Dark Souls 3, so you could have some people invade you as blues. Well, I guess they don't really invade you. Well, anyway, they join your world as blues to defend you from other Covenant members who could attack you. Or if it's going to be more of a battle royale type game. We really know very little about this at this point. It did say that there's supposed to be a maximum of 8 players per game, I guess. So if they do have returning Covenants, at least you get up to 8 people this time. But of course, this is all just very heavy conjecture based off of the barest minimum of information. So, yeah. When you're getting hyped for a game that you're not going to get, you hate it, and it's bullcrap. At first, I was like, well, I'm sure it'll come out on PC at least a year or so later. And then I was like, wait a second. This isn't Sony, or this is actual Nintendo. This thing ain't never going to leave the Disney Nintendo vault, you know? So, it sucks. Better start selling plasma. But yeah, there's just like a lot of really cool elements there. Like the super cool moon. I actually went to the website and was starting to like rip assets from it because it's cool as hell. So let me pull some of that stuff up for us. Because the logo looks cool as hell. If I had more time before stream, if I wasn't working on that other video that I would have like put this in the background of my chat bar. So this is like the logo. I don't know. It just looks really cool. It almost reminds me of like the punishment rune from Suikoden 4. And then I don't think we really care about the logo. We just saw it at the end there, but you get like a semi-transparent version of this from their website, which is super cool. So who pissed off Majora's Mask? I'm really hyped to learn what the hell this thing is. And then this is like the only other asset. And this was in the trailer as well. Like this door opens in the trailer. But it's covered by fog and stuff. And it's just like hidden in the back. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like there's very little info on any of that stuff. When he said it better not go to PC, your laptop can barely handle Team Fortress 2. I mean, the reason why you'd want it to go to PC is because you could eventually mod it. And then, obviously, if you ever get an upgraded PC, which is more or less likely, you could eventually run it one day, perhaps. That Horn said, you have the other opinion. If it's PvP focused, you'll probably not buy it. I'm not sure. I'm very curious to see how Night Rain is going to influence this. Teen Sith made a joke in the server earlier today about how people crap on Night Rain for not being, for like being lame or whatever, but then they're going to go out and buy this day one. But I'm like, yeah, my biggest complaint about Night Rain isn't so much that like it's different. It's that it's not different enough for me. I mean, I'm still going to play it. I'm still going to shill it, but I am kind of annoyed that Night Rain doesn't even have something like a stance meter incorporated into the game. Like they could have like modernized some more features, I think, of the game. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more features next month than we knew we would get, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Oh yeah, and then okay, it's on the screen, so I don't need to say it. Yeah, coming out in 2026. Because I tend to try not to believe anything, I'm not going to believe this. So for me, I would say like December 31st at the earliest, with a higher chance of it getting delayed, because pretty much all FromSoft games get delayed. And without putting a date on things, that's just kind of what I expect. You believe Night Rain's a testing ground for this? It's really weird because this obviously seems to have had a lot more work go into it than Night Rain. Oh yeah, so the other really big important bit of news in relation to Duskbloods is that we're going to get a developer interview, potentially with Miyazaki-san himself, on the 4th. Although I think that's the Japanese 4th. So, tomorrow? Tomorrow, depending on your time zone. So, I forgot to look at what time it's supposed to come, but, what do they call the developer interview? I can't even remember that off the top of my head. Hey, Corey, nice to see you again. Tree houses are tomorrow, so probably? Okay. Global said PvP is one of the most fun parts of FromSoft games and you suck at it. See, I have the opposite opinion. I can't stand the PvP because of the net play issues with like all the lag. It just angers me and makes me not want to engage with it at all. Yeah, Matt said, this looks like a real game. Night Rain looks like a fun experimental thing that is worth for $40 or so. I'm not even sure if it's really worth 40, to be honest. I would be more comfortable at 20, maybe 25, unless there's a lot more features that we didn't get to see in the network test. Hey, Phantom Leaves, how's it going? I'm feeling excited. I'm on the hype train. How about you, my man? Whew. So yeah, chat, how are you guys feeling about it? Maybe I should make one of those YouTube-y type polls. So, Duskbloods. Hype or nah? So, option 1, hype. Option 2, nah. Miss. And then I'm going to add an option. Miss me with that exclusivity stuff. But instead of another word, instead we'll use another word. Yeah, so of course with this being an exclusive for Switch 2, you're looking at already $520 at the very bare minimum, which is really rough, but at least it's not going to come out for a while, so you could kind of plan and budget ahead accordingly. And that's, of course, if you even want to Switch 2. And if you don't want to Switch 2, which I'm not going to blame people about, yeah, that sucks. Galaxy Dragon says that their biggest concern is, since it's a console exclusive and multiplayer focused, it'll limit the amount of people playing it. That's probably a good point to bring up as well. And when we looked at the Nintendo Direct with like the multiplayer Discord integration, oh my god, it looked god awful. Like it looked like you had 5 frames per second looking at other people's screens. And with the kind of connectivity issues with the internet with the Switch #1, that is also kind of a point to be wary of. So maybe the Switch 2 will have better internet connectivity, because if you ever try to play anything online in the Switch, it can be pretty rough out there. So Smash Bros can be pretty bad with the lag sometimes. Mario Maker's multiplayer mode, I legitimately don't understand how anybody can kind of enjoy it with how bad it is at times. And same thing with like Mario Kart. It's hopefully the sequel is better. Mendacious Cat, you can't bring yourself to get excited. I mean, I wouldn't try to force it, and as more information releases, maybe you'll get more excited with its release. And if you don't, I mean, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to go out and spend your money on it. And then Phantom Leaves, you've also got Metroid Prime 4 to be hyped for. Yeah. And not to be a total Nintendo shill, but it's going to be interesting seeing how many differences there's going to be between like the Switch 1 games and the Switch 2 versions. It doesn't seem like it's going to be any more drastic than what you would get moving from PS4 to PS5. If anything, it seems more underwhelming in that regard, but maybe that's just because like the console limitations. I don't know. You don't have to buy a camera, D. That's supposed to be like a peripheral upgrade if you want it. And also, welcome back in. Consoles are approaching the asking price for the PS3 when it was new? Yeah. Mortis says, Switch 2 has promise despite you hating the blatant money grubbing. I mean, unfortunately, money grubbing ain't illegal, so people are going to do it. I was wondering whether or not the Switch 2 would release somewhere between $300 and $400. That's kind of about what I expected. So when I saw $449, I was like, oh man, that sucks. But if it was a $500, it would have been a really tough sell for me. $449 is still a really tough sell for me, but it's like, damn it, it's not $500. And it's like that perfect middle ground for me saying no versus I'll think about it. And I guess with me being a content creator, I can justify it a little bit more easily, but yeah. I'm definitely not happy about the increased price for digital products. So I definitely know people are looking forward to hacking the Switch 2 so that way they can get their games at a reduced value, if you catch my drift. You wonder how much the expansions for existing games are going to be. Bro, I didn't even think about that. Oh, God. Well, I mean, is it really that bad? Because Night Rain was what, or not Night Rain, Night Rain was already $40. Wasn't Shadow of the Erdtree also $40? Or is it 30? I don't remember. 30? Okay, it was 30. Thank you. Damn it. If they can use that to justify increased DLC prices as well, that's gonna suck. I mean, I know they're gonna do it. And the worst part about it is because Nintendo is going to do it, you know that's going to open the door for all the other devs to do it, except for like maybe Steam. So, Nintendo stuff also doesn't go on sale super often. So if you do go the Switch 2 route, at least there are going to be like physical products for the games. There isn't like a digital only version of the Switch 2, thank goodness. So your best bet for catching deals would probably be like bargain bin type stuff in game stores, or just super good sales for like the physical products that are not being vendored by Nintendo directly. That's how I got like Armored Core 6 for $20. And I was pretty happy with that steal, to be honest. Oh, it was 40 for Shadow? Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Oh, they're $30 upgrades for the Switch 2 versions of their previous games. Bro, that sucks. That's scummy as hell. I guess I don't remember how much like the upgrades are from PS4 to PS5 with like Ghost of Tsushima. I should look into it. So, okay, folks, that was very, very fun and exciting to look at least for me. So, what's our poll say? We got 63% hype, 5% say nah, and then 32% say miss me with that exclusivity stuff. Yeah, so it's kind of wild. Like, is FromSoft getting really big bank just from Nintendo for like being exclusive? I'm sure they must, because this one isn't being published with Bandai Namco for once. It's just a full-on FromSoft production, which is really exciting in its own way. They finally like hit the big leagues, perhaps, but I would like to say that I could imagine that this will get ported over eventually, but you know, looking over at Bloodborne, I'm not going to hold my breath. Nintendo likely owns Duskblood? I don't know. Because we didn't see any Nintendo logos pop up with this, did we? I don't believe so. It does say exclusive, but it also doesn't say exclusive forever. Nintendo is publishing? Wait, where did you see that? Maybe it's like somewhere on their website. I don't know. It says so on the site? Okay. Whew. Let me go ahead and hydrate here. All right, so anyway, let's go ahead and move on into some good old-fashioned lore from these old-ass FromSoft titles known as Elden Ring. So next on the docket, we have How the Erdtree Stole the Power of the Sun and Destroyed Its Realm, the Sun Realm Part 1 by The Alchemist. I don't believe I've watched anything from The Alchemist's channel. I've had some of their videos recommended to me by people in the community, and the titles and thumbnails have caught my attention regardless. So, looking forward to this. Hopefully, it's going to be good. And then, it seems like their voice is already quiet, so I might need to turn this one up.
Over the entire span of human history, the sun was always crucial to every civilization. You see, civilization as we know it only started because of one thing: agriculture. Therefore, the sun was regarded as the giver of life itself, through heat, light, and food. That's why the sun is at center of worship of every civilization. And usually the god connected to the sun is the king of the gods and the creator god. Elden Ring is heavily influenced by mythology, yet the sun is absent. The sun in Elden Ring simply isn't important at all. You can even finish your entire playthrough without noticing it. Even in lore, there are very few mentions of it. And when you remember that Elden Ring setting is heavily revolving around, well, trees, this absence is quite uncanny. It's like the sun was scrapped from everything on purpose. And indeed, I believe that this is the case. The sun was erased from history, its power stolen, its color drained, and it was eclipsed by the Erdtree.
Yeah, I know a lot of people believe this. Like, Elden Enthusiast is a really big proponent of this theory. I, in typical Last Protagonist fashion, remain on the fence. Like, I could buy into it to some degree, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there's some facets to the story that we don't have the full details of. So, yeah, I just always remain kind of eternally skeptical about this kind of stuff.
Yes, I believe in Elden Ring eclipses doesn't necessarily require a moon. Instead, the Erdtree itself eclipsed the sun, drained its power, its golden color, and replaced it. Then Marica erased everything about the sun and its realm from history. In this series, we will go over the rise and fall of the Sun Realm. But in order to truly get the full picture, we need to start from its fall and go back in time from there. The story of Elden Ring is heavily revolving around the concept of cycles repeating themselves. Just like the Erdtree was the center of worship and the giver of light during the Golden Order cycle, the sun was the center of worship and the giver of light during the Sun Realm cycle. This can be easily found if we look at the description of the warming stone. The item tells us that the Erdtree was once as warm as the gentle sun and would gradually heal all who bathed in its rays. We can learn here that the Erdtree replaced the sun itself as the giver of light and warmth. This lore revelation is one.
So this isn't related to the video just yet, but it took me a minute to see this because I'm apparently blind as hell. So Mortis, thanks for sending me the link. The FromSoftware JP version of the... Wait, this is in English? Okay, anyway, the FromSoft site for the Duskbloods does say that this game is being co-developed by Nintendo and FromSoftware. Wait, where was it? I just saw it, didn't I? Oh, yeah, okay. So the Duskbloods published by Nintendo / FromSoft. So yeah, that's very interesting because it's only on this section that it says anything about actually being published by Nintendo. Because when you look at the legal stuff, it just says copyright FromSoft. Oh, I guess, I mean, that's the difference between publishing and owning the copyrights. So anyway, now we know for sure. It is a full-on Nintendo IP. So I'm going to back this video up a little bit.
One of as the gentle sun and would gradually heal all who bathed in its rays. We can learn here that the Erdtree replaced the sun itself as the giver of light and warmth. This lore revelation is one of the most important in the game, but in matter of fact, it's just the tip of the iceberg, because the base material required to craft the warming stone can answer one of the biggest mysteries in Elden Ring. The base material is called the Sanctuary Stone, and
So this isn't necessarily like a criticism of the Alchemist here. One issue I think we have to contend with as like lore theorists or as the lore community in general is trying to decipher when the text is being used metaphorically or literally here. And I tend to rely on a more literalist interpretation of the game for the most part. And so if you do take that literal interpretation, then perhaps the Erdtree did shine more literally like the sun in an age past. And that could have changed due to the shattering. It could have changed because of like Marica usurping the power of the sun. We don't really know. But if you take this metaphorically, then the Erdtree itself doesn't necessarily have to usurp the gold from the sun, or however you want to describe it. So Elden, you soften your stance on this a bit. The sun to you now is second fiddle to the Erdtree in some ways. Do you mean originally or like currently? Because I'm assuming you're the latter currently. And then Chadwick thinks that the giants were sun worshippers because they often get maligned. The Promethean myth is highly suspect to parts of Christendom, and both are outright banned by Judaism. Interesting. I don't know. I don't get the vibe that the giants stole fire from the sun, though. I guess we don't really have a fire origin story in Elden Ring, do we? That's very anomalous. From what I understand, and the source could have been wrong, every culture in, I almost said the United States, in the world started off with some kind of, not like started off, but they all had their own version of a myth where man steals fire from the gods to some degree. Oh, Aiden, Thief of Fire is a Prometheus reference. Oh, so if you say like the giants themselves are gods, I could see that. Okay. But is he though? Because I would almost argue not in a way, because the fire monks had to have been created by Marica, and he was a fire monk, but he stole it and was trying to, not even trying to give it to somebody else, I guess. He was just kind of keeping it for himself. But nonetheless, I see the point that you're making.
It originates from the fallen ruins all over the lands between. It is said to feed and strengthen the light as it shines, and we can see here its inherent light shining through. The warming stones were made to mimic the effect that the Erdtree once had, but in order to do so, they need a light source.
So building off this point in a way, you could make the arguments, and he might get to this later, so I might be getting ahead of him. You could make the argument that the sun should therefore be equated to the two fingers in some way, because the warming stone becomes the way it's a warming stone via the two fingers sigil / incantation if it was originally a sanctuary stone. So that's honestly something I haven't really thought of in much depth at all. The two fingers connections to the sun, which could relate to stars in general, especially with meta and whatnot, now that I think about it.
Over the lands between. It is said to feed and strengthen the light as it shines, and we can see here its inherent light shining through. The warming stones were made to mimic the effect that the Erdtree once had, but in order to do so, they need a light source, but not just any light. They need the light of the sun stored in the sanctuary stones. The sanctuary stones that originates from the ruins of Faramazula. Faramazula, the floating royal city of the rulers of the previous cycle, the dragons. The cycle that venerated the sun and placed it at the center of their worship. They even stored its power in sanctuary stones, just like we store the power of the sun through solar panels. And the final nail to the coffin, the beastmen of Faramazula can actually drop sanctuary stones. And the beastmen that live in death holds the Sun Realm shield. We will go over all of this, but as I said at the beginning, we need to do it in reverse. So the warming stones use the light of the sun stored in the sanctuary stones. Now after the DLC, we actually get an even stronger variation of the warming stones. They are explicitly called sun warmth stone, but this is just the beginning. In order to craft those golden sun warmth stone, you need 3 ingredients: a black butterfly, a spirit gravestone, and the blessed bone shard. Only one of those has a golden color, the blessed bone shard. So the power of the golden sun warmth stone comes from the blessed bone shard. But what is the source of that power? Let's read the blessed bone shard description together. Shard of bone with a golden shine, a bone fragment touched by the gold of the shadow tree, broken from the remains of the warriors who perished in the realm of shadow. A blessing such as this is said to be the greatest honor that can be granted to the dead. The blessed bone shard powers come from the gold of the shadow tree. But wait a minute, how is this possible? How can the gold of the shadow tree result in a sun warmth stone? Unless the gold of the shadow tree actually comes from the golden sun. Unless the tree stole the power of the sun and drained it of its golden color.
So this might sound a little bit tinfoily on the author's part, but there's definitely reason to believe this if you consider how the Skidoo tree avatar is essentially a sunflower as well. And yeah. Elden Ring, I almost called him Elden Ring. Elden enthusiast, do you almost feel conniptions about how we're given no info on the Skidoo tree's gold? It's sap, bro.
The Shadow Tree, despite not being the center of our journey in the Shadowlands, was incredibly important. Because the Shadow Tree actually can give us some insight about the Erdtree in its prime. Unlike its counterpart who died long ago, the Shadow Tree still retains its blessed sap, its bounty. But the sap isn't the only power that the Erdtree lost while the Shadow Tree still retains. As we said earlier, the Erdtree was once as warm as the gentle sun and would heal anyone who bathed in its rays. Again, unlike the Erdtree who lost that power, the Shadow Tree still retains the power of the sun inside of it. That's exactly why the gold of the Shadow Tree can produce sun warmth stone. But this isn't the only evidence. One of the most unique bosses in the entirety of Elden Ring is the Shadow Tree avatar, the only 3-phase boss we have. The Shadow Tree avatar is actually called a Shadow Sunflower, and of course it's modeled after a real life.
I think it's the sunflower part is an appellation of the English. It's complicated. I don't think it's a bad localization or anything. It's like it's like what you would get if you replaced the character for sun. So it's just like a shadow flower, but the implication is that it's related to the sunflowers, I guess.
life sunflower. Not just that, but that sunflower is called a manifestation of the shadow tree itself. It's like the game is trying to tell us that the shadow tree itself is some kind of a sunflower, a tree that feeds off the power of the sun. Now, if I didn't blow your mind yet, be ready. We can see here the shadow tree avatar. Now, if we put the radiant gold mask beside it, it gets crazy. The mask doesn't just look like a sun or a sunflower, but those dots looks identical to the eyes of the shadow tree avatar, especially the dots on the left. The mask is clearly modeled after the shadow tree avatar. It seems the ever-brilliant gold mask knew much more than we thought. A fact that becomes more clear if we look at the description of the radiant gold mask. It says that the mask is designed to resemble a blazing golden halo. Now, what gives a golden halo? Yes, a golden sun. The choice of the word blazing here is very interesting too, because the most common meaning behind the word is very hot, and it's mostly used to describe the sun. Now, another interpretation that you may think about when seeing this mask is the halo of light used in religious illustrations, like the illustration of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary. But if we look at them side by side, you may notice a big difference. The gold mask isn't just a circle, it's a circle with spikes all around it, like the rays of the sun. And of course, as we said, it has the same eye design of the shadow tree avatar. Even if we considered it a normal halo, it would also represent the sun, because
So I wouldn't necessarily agree that it looks like the shadow tree avatar there, because like the Pleiades, at least that depiction is a little bit different. Maybe he just means like the big ring part of it, in which case that part is fine. So to answer some of like Elden enthusiast's question here, like these are the characters for sunflower essentially. So Nietzsche means sun and Neen means like ring or wheel. It's like a circle shape essentially. And the shadow sunflower is this essentially. So instead of the character right here for sun, you have the character for shadow. And then Reen means like ring, wheel essentially. So you kind of get what what it's implied. Hold on, let me try to rephrase that. You kind of infer what's implied based off of like what the visual imagery of the shadow flower is. Like it looks like a sunflower. So if you replace sun with shadow, I mean, that kind of makes sense in another number of levels. So yeah, because this doesn't really mean anything on its own as far as I know. Whoops, wrong button. Yeah, you just have Kage plus Wa or Rin. So
the halo as a religious symbol was used way back before Jesus. It was used for the first time in ancient Egypt, where the sun god Ra was always portrayed with a circle of light behind him, representing the sun, of course. In matter of fact, ancient Egypt and its mythology is incredibly important for understanding the sun realm, and it will come very handy later on. But for now, do you know that in ancient Egypt, they had a capital that was called the City of the Sun, or Heliopolis? So stay tuned for the next parts in the series and hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. Now going back to the Erdtree and its shadow, we need to talk about something really obvious about them.
I do like the transposed shots comparing the Skidoo tree to the Erdtree.
They are trees, and well, trees, they can only exist because of the sun. Of course, in real life, we all know
Alright, Elden Ring mushroom theory enjoyers, rise up.
how important the sun is to trees. Trees can simply not exist without the energy they get from the sun, because it's how they make food. You see, trees need water and food to survive. They get water from very deep under the earth's surface through their roots, and they get carbon dioxide from the air. But both of those ingredients are useless without the sun, because the chemical process needed to turn those two components into glucose can't happen without the energy provided by the sun. In turn,
So, on a foundational scientific level, I don't really have any qualms with this. I think things get a little bit more complicated when you have a story like Elden Ring because you have magic trees, and that might sound a little bit trite and contrived, I admit. However, when you go into the Skidoo lands, there's a kind of golden minor Erdtree that is like growing legitimately in a cave where the sun cannot or should not shine. So that kind of puts a little bit of a damper on the whole sun thing. And we also have info that like the Erdtree is being fed from its roots, so who knows if it actually needs the sun, if it's getting like magical holy juice from absorbing everybody's spirits slash runes slash memories slash what have you.
trees give us food and oxygen to breathe, and so humans cannot live without them or the sun. Remember at the start of the video, I said that the sun was worshipped as a giver of life. Now that's why. Now if we look at Elden Ring, we can draw some very strong parallels here. Just like the roots of the trees search for water, the roots of the Erdtree also search for something. First, those roots are connected to the great tree and most likely the crucible itself, which acts like water in real life. In matter of fact, this parallel between the crucible and water is always present in Elden Ring. In various item descriptions that talk about the crucible, it's being called a torrent of life. Of course, torrent means a stream of water. We will make a video about the crucible after the revelation we received from the DLC in the future, so stay tuned. Going back to the roots of the Erdtree,
So when he says did he say stream of water? Maybe he said stream. Torrent in this case does obviously tie into like water symbolism, but it's also kind of emblematic of a spiral or a rectified current, essentially, which kind of may tie into how the Hornset controlled the power of the Crucible. But anyway, this isn't entirely relevant, but I wondered whether or not the depiction on Devonia's hammer is meant to show that of a rune, but I digress. Stella, welcome back into the stream. How are you doing tonight?
we also have another energy source, Erdtree burials. We can see with our own eyes how the Erdtree feeds off the corpses of the dead through the ritual called Erdtree burials. Again, this draws even more parallels to the real-life trees, because in matter of fact, humans can be a great fertilizer. But most people wouldn't like the idea of eating food fertilized by dead bodies. So all of those parallels here to real-life trees, but the sun is totally absent. Isn't that really weird? Indeed it is. But you know now that this is a big lie. The Erdtree actually drained the entirety of the power of the sun. It even drained its golden color for itself, which resulted in the state we are in. The Erdtree became golden, it got an absurd amount of power, and it replaced the sun. Now I said that the Erdtree drained the sun of its color. Doesn't that phrase sound familiar? You know what happens when a sun is drained of its color? Yes, an eclipse. The eclipse is an incredibly important yet mysterious subject in the lore of Elden Ring. Numerous items, characters, and places talk about it. Castle Sol, the Wandering Mausoleums, Eclipse Shields, and Mausoleum Knights. We can read here the description of the eclipse. A metal great shield painted with a sun in eclipse. The eclipsed sun, drained of color, is a protective star of the soulless demigods. It aids the Mausoleum Knights by keeping distant death at bay. In numerous other items, the eclipsed sun is said to be drained of color. Of course, over the past 3 years, we always looked at the eclipse like a real-life eclipse, where the moon is the reason behind the eclipse. But what if it's an eclipse in the metaphorical way, where the sun is eclipsed but not necessarily by the moon, and it gets drained of its color? I believe the reason behind the last eclipse that ended the reign of the sun realm was not a moon, but the Erdtree. It stole the golden color of the sun and left it drained of color. Let's look at a very important item in Elden Ring, the smithing stones. We have two kinds of smithing stones, the normal smithing stone and the somber smithing stones. The ancient dragon smithing stone reads as follows: smithing stone made polishing a golden gravel stone. A scale of the ancient dragon lord and hidden treasure of Farum Azula. Of course, the smithing stone color is golden, but even the description mentions that explicitly. Now let's go to the somber one. Ancient dragon rock smithing stone drained of color. A scale of the ancient dragon lord and hidden treasure of Farum Azula. We can see here very clearly how the golden smithing stones was drained of their color. I believe it's just like the golden sun of the dragons that got drained of its color, but not due to a moon, but due to something that used that golden power and color for itself, the Erdtree. Now you may ask a question: if the Erdtree drained the sun of its color, then why the sun we see in the lands between isn't totally drained of color? Remember what we said about the Erdtree earlier, that it lost its powers? I believe that's why the sun looks in a better shape now, because it's gradually retrieving its power from the dying Erdtree. And when this process is finished, another cycle would begin. The subject of the eclipse and the sun realm is huge and very complicated. That's why I prefer to split it on several parts, and in the next part we will go even deeper into the subject. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think. Until next part, farewell, fellow Tarnished.
So I had some thoughts,
Before
but
the
he was kind of going
over
on in
the
such a way where it didn't really give me a lot of openings to like speak to things, and there wasn't like anything particularly egregious enough to distract me to stop things. And by egregious enough, I don't mean like this was egregious at all. I think it was a pretty well-grounded video. I'm going to go ahead, as always, and share it with you guys in the chat if you want to give The Alchemist some support. So, yeah, I do think this is a good video. Let me go ahead and like it before I forget. Wait, so I must have watched something from them if I've already subscribed? Okay.
The eclipse is an incredibly important yet mysterious subject in the lore of Elden Ring. Of reign of the
Oh yeah,
sun
so
realm
one of the questions that I would have would be, if he believes the Erdtree eclipsed the sun and drained it of its color, then I'm curious as to what he thinks drained the color of the somber smithing stones. Unfortunately, I think due to the placement of the somber smithing stones and whatnot, some of this is a little bit of a gameplay contrivance, and it's kind of hard to take it all seriously, even though like the highest tiers say that they're treasured in Farum Azula. It's okay, sure, if you say so. One of the more interesting things to me about the actual functional differences between golden smithing stones and somber smithing stones is that golden smithing stones cannot be used to upgrade weapons with unique properties, aka weapons that tend to have their unique skills or soul arts. They're not soul arts. What are they called? Battle memories? Weapon skills, right? Anyway, unique skills in FromSoft games, or no, in Elden Ring, and more specifically in, what am I saying? Ashes of War are memories that can be imbued into weapons and stuff. And it's a little bit ironic that you can have some somber type weapons that have no skill. But anyway, technically, equipment is supposed to have the memories of their previous owners within them, which is why you're able to use skills, canonically speaking. And somber smithing stones can't be used on weapons that don't really have their own unique skills. These are used for unique weapons, and they're drained of something. So the way that I think it's supposed to work is that golden smithing stones have gold in them, therefore they probably have memories of their own already, and therefore they're incompatible trying to upgrade a weapon that has its own skills. Maybe I'm saying this a little bit awkwardly. Let me try to make an illustration to help. Alright, so I'm going to make 2 terrible looking daggers, or witch hats, whatever you want to call it. And this one will represent somber. And we'll do a golden one. Wait, why don't I? Well, whatever. I must have made a Chris knife with as wavy as that was. And this will be gold. So, somber. How do I say this? I think unique weapons have their own gold within them, which gives you skills. Skills versus your base weapons, which have no skill. And for this type of normal weapon, you actually need... Oh god, this looks awful. Hold on. You need... Oh god, that looks even worse than I was hoping it would. Your golden smithing stones. But for the unique weapons, you need somber ones. And I think because this one doesn't have memory, it can be used to not overwrite this. Because if you took the memories of this one, it could try to overwrite it, so you can't put that on a unique weapon. But because there's nothing in these, you can take the memories and infuse them with like Hugh style to make a stronger weapon. So hopefully that makes sense. Hey Jose Mora, nice to see you again. Have I discussed the lore implications of the Hollow Slayer Greatsword being in the new Elden Ring Tarnished Edition? It's a screenshot with Lucatiel's set. We talked about it a little bit, not necessarily to that degree about the Hollow Slayer Greatsword. With the first video of the night when we looked at the new Elden Ring Switch 2 teaser trailer. I seriously hope that the Dark Souls universe is not canon to Elden Ring. I'm gonna riot if that happens. I'm just gonna quit. You'll see this channel get deleted overnight. Maybe I won't be that drastic about it. I don't intend to be. But anyway, so that's something I wanted to bring up. Which, why did I even get? Oh yeah. So I'm curious as to why he thinks these somber smithing stones are drained in the first place, essentially. And then I wanted to give you guys that little bit of lore because it just kind of intrigues me.
Stone and the somber smithing stones. The ancient dragon smithing stone reads as follows. Smiths was health, the Erdtree. Now you may ask a question.
Oh yeah, so one thing that I was wondering if he was going to bring up would be the connection between the sun and the shadow tree, and of course the shadow tree's connection to the Erdtree. He's gonna get into that point because I was ready to jump down his throat based off of what he like came up with. Because I've got a lot of issues, and this isn't like really a problem with him at all. I didn't know you could do this. Eh? Nani? Bros. I didn't know. I did not know. So yeah, I was wondering if he was wondering if the shadow tree itself was used to usurp the power of the sun. I believe that is what he's kind of implying based off of his arguments about the sap of the shadow tree and stuff to begin with. He didn't go so far as to say whether or not the shadow tree was the great tree. He might have just like left that to be read in between the lines, which I don't blame him for doing that. I do that myself, even though sometimes people read things that I did not put there. But I mean, that's kind of the nature of leaving things in between the lines there. So yeah, overall, I do think this is a good video. I would like a little bit more concrete stuff between what he thinks about the role of the Skidoo tree and the Erdtree itself and the Eclipse. And also more specifically, what he thinks about the current state of the Erdtree, which he did talk about. And more particularly, when did it look like the sun, and then when did that stop? So part of the reason I bring that up is because you have the potential that the Erdtree could have been more like the sun in Godfrey's time and then less like it in Radagon's time. Or it could have been like the sun up until the very shattering. So sun-like in Godfrey's time and Radagon's time up till the ring got shattered. So yeah, I'm just left wondering personally. Here's my chat. There it is. You said the sun seems to be involved with Golden Mask and Dung Eater, so I mean, even in the Golden Order sigil, do I have a good big old version of that? I know I do somewhere. I just don't know if it's like labeled well. Goodbye, MS Paint. Sigil? Spell sigils. In the Golden Order Fundamentalist sigil, you've got like the gold mask depiction at the very top of it. So the sun is incorporated into it to some degree. So if Dung Eater's golden medallion is supposed to be emblematic of a time before the Erdtree and the Omen, that could be one thing, but Gold Mask seeks to perfect fundamentalism, so it's really just open to interpretation as always. Chadwick said the new MS Paint sucks. Anyone miss the old MS Paint? Which one are you talking about? Because they like absolutely nerfed the hell out of Paint 3D now. So you can't open files directly on your computer with Paint 3D anymore, which is extremely annoying. I still use normal MS Paint because I'm old and stubborn and stuck in my ways, but I do like using Paint 3D for like transparency and whatnot. Oh, Windows 95 Paint? I don't have that. I mean, that's essentially just like normal paint. Like that's what I was using a moment ago. Hey, True Connoisseur, nice to see you again. The sun lore is your fatal weakness? Are you a vampire? All right, so let's go ahead. I think this might be this next video in a series here. I just want to double check. Yeah, he doesn't list it as part 2, but this is the next video in his channel. So
Over the entire span of
let me look in the video description. I looked at the first one to see if it was. In this video, we will continue the rise and fall of the Sun Realm. Okay. It would have been nice if there was a part 2 here. It's kind of close. You hate it, is what you're trying to say? Well, the good news is all Windows 10 support is ending in like October or something this year, so we can all get wrecked.
Age of the Erdtree and the Golden. Before the age of the Erdtree and the Golden Order, there was a vast and glorious empire. An empire ruled by the ancient dragons and their dragon lord. An empire that had the Elden Ring and a god that was fled. A god not only connected to death, like many people think.
Hold on, I feel like I need to pay like close attention to that.
There was a vast and glorious empire. An empire ruled by the ancient dragons and their dragon lord. An empire that had the Elden Ring and a god that was fled. A god not only connected to death, like many people think, but a god of dual opposite nature. A god representing both life and death, just like the sun itself. Be ready, because in this video I am going to change how you look at Elden Ring forever. The empire we are talking about was known as the Sun Realm, and it spanned the entirety of the lands between. There is a lot of evidence that prove that the Sun Realm was actually the empire of the ancient dragons. In order to find the first of those clues, we need to head to a place connected with the sun. a castle filled with sun imagery and dedicated entirely to the sun and the eclipse. Castle Sol in Latin, or Castle of the Sun in English. On top of Castle Sol, and specifically in the Commander Boss Arena, we can find a sigil. This sigil can only resemble one thing, the sigil of the sun.
It's a flower.
Up till now, this is normal, but what's very interesting is the reappearance of the same sigil in Farum Azula. We can see the same sigil here on the bridge leading to the Bestial Sanctum. Not just that, but the sigil is all over Farum Azula itself. This isn't the only connection between Farum Azula and the sun. All over the lands between, we can find old soldiers of the Sun Realm. Their trademark is the usage of the Sun Realm shield, the only direct reference to the Sun Realm in Elden Ring. Not just that, but all of them are living in death. There is also a variation of those soldiers wearing great capes with a symbol of the sun on it. Those soldiers are all over the lands between, starting from Limgrave, Caelid, Altus Plateau, mountain tops of the Giants, and even the Shadowlands. This is a testament of the huge influence of the Sun Realm in its prime, an empire spanning over the entire lands between, which ties incredibly well with what we know about ancient dragons.
So yeah, if you also extrapolate that if Castle Sol was constructed using similar techniques as all of the other type of fortified positions throughout the lands between, you could say that it has a direct connection to like all of the watchtower locations in the lands between. So you have a watchtower in that style in Celia, one on the Weeping Peninsula, like right as you enter the peninsula. Castle Redmane has like the church that's in the same style that you can find in Castle Sol. Stormvale Castle has that same kind of church, and of course Stormvale itself seems to have received a number of like visual upgrades over time. But setting that stuff aside, the Sun Realm should have been absolutely massive if it is indeed related to Castle Sol, which I think there's a very good possibility of that. And so Corvinus and the Maniae, welcome back in. How's it going?
They ruled the lands between in the prehistoric era. Going back to Farum Azula, we can find beastmen who live in death carrying the Sun Realm shield. Now those soldiers aren't the only remains of the Sun Realm scattered across the lands between. In matter of fact, there are other remains, literally. Along many regions of the lands between, we can find ruins that fell from the sky. Those ruins belong to Farum Azula. What's more interesting is that we can find something called sanctuary stones in those ruins. Those sanctuary stones are said to feed and strengthen the light as it shines. Those stones have inherent light in them, but not any light, the light of the sun itself. A fact proven by the items we can craft using those stones. We can craft warming stones. Those warming stones mimic the effect that the Erdtree and the sun once had. Those sanctuary stones were used by the Empire of the Sun to store sunlight, just like the real-life solar panels. And again, back to Farum Azula, we can get those stones to drop from the Beastmen. Now for the final nail to the coffin, the rock heart item we find in the DLC.
So some of this might be a little bit of an argument of convenience. I don't necessarily think he has to be wrong about this, but it might be worth pointing out. If you look at the warming stone, it's not as though it's just like one specific stone that was always a sanctuary stone and is using specifically the sanctuary stone's power. It's also using the power of the earthly flowers that are used to craft it, plus the smoldering butterflies, in addition to the sanctuary stone. So it's not all sanctuary stone juice here. So that might be a little bit of a detriment to his arguments in both these videos. And yeah, I was also going to bring up the Frenzy Flame Stone as being another thing that can come out of crafting a Sanctuary Stone. And those ones are crafted with yellow embers and Sanctuary Stones. So is this sun-like? I don't know. It seems like you're using something like the natural refractive properties of the Sanctuary Stones or something. I don't know.
Receive a ton of info about dragons and dragon communion from the DLC. but an often overlooked item is actually incredibly important for the entire story of Elden Ring. The rock heart item talks about Dragon Communion and its original form, way back in time, and it states that those partakers of Dragon Communion saw a remote thing from eternity. The last thing the partakers saw was human eyes with a sunset, its color faded and tarnished, a remote thing from eternity. We already know that the meaning behind the sun drained of color is an eclipse. The item is telling us that an eclipse happened way back in time when Dragon Communion was in its original form.
And this I would disagree with, and I think this just comes down to a more metaphorical reading of the rock arts. Oh, I already translated this? Okay, cool. Thanks, past me. All right, so I don't really think there's like a huge difference between the localization and the Japanese, to be honest. Hold on. All right, I'm not too concerned about the first two paragraphs after all. The last thing the partaker saw with human eyes was a sunset. Its colors faded and tarnished, a remote thing from eternity. How do I explain this? Damn it, this is like one of those more like vibe-based things, which is a little bit arguable from like a semantics standpoint, perhaps. Or I just don't have the skill set to be able to articulate my thought as well as I would like. Or how'd I put it here? Interesting. Okay, so I have like present perfect tense there. Well, I guess this is technically past. Well, it is present perfect, isn't it? Anyway, so the final sight they gazed upon with the flesh of man was in the midst of sunset, yet everything was faded. Eternity truly was a distant thing. So a remote thing from eternity? Oh, that's kind of a different flavor, isn't it? The thing which is tripping me up right now, trying to break this down for you guys, is the way that it's referring to the sunset being faded or tarnished in a way. For what it's worth, like Iroase does mean like tarnished, but it literally, like tarnished breaks down to just like color fading. Whoops, color faded. Don't need to reverse those two. And it's kind of left in a present form rather than like a past form, or like a past perfect form, present perfect form. So everything is faded, or was fade. How do I say that? Was faded. All right, so I'll start from the top here a little bit. Basically, when they had communion with the rock hearts or whatnot, I view it as though when they looked over the scenery, the setting, whatever or not, even though it was in the midst of sunset. Oh yeah, this would contradict him, wouldn't it? What's the English say? Sunset. Yeah, you wouldn't describe a like an eclipse as a sunset, though. Let me look at chat. The dragon just can't see color. It's that simple. Right. I know that. Like, I know the point that I'm trying to get to. I'm just trying to break it down piece by piece. So that way I'm not jumping ahead of myself and being unclear. Theory killed live on stream? I mean, I don't think it's a bad theory. It's just like, unfortunate. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad theory. It's just like, it's very, very easy to overlook like minor details. And these are like the semantic quibbles that I enjoy. Because sunset, like a sunset doesn't preclude an eclipse, to be fair there. Like, there can be an eclipse at sunset, but I feel like that would be a bigger deal than just looking at the sunset itself. Okay. So, I think I have a better way to explain this. Which, I mean, I'm going to come back to the same point. I just figured out a better way to articulate it. So, in the English, the sunset can sound a little bit more particular as though it's talking about literally the sun itself. But sunset in English is also ambiguous enough to mean the entire setting. And the Japanese is a little bit clearer that it's the setting of the sunset, essentially. So he isn't just looking at the sun itself being faded. Like, literally the entire environment is faded, which ties into what was it, Weddy, who said that a moment ago? Yeah, Weddy said that the dragons just can't see color. I think it's kind of the opposite, that they went to Mexico and they had the yellow filter over everything to the point where they couldn't distinguish anything from anything else. All right, Wendy, thanks for joining us. You have a good night. And you updated your profile. I see that now. This should have been called Disgraced instead of Tarnished. I like that as an idea because of the little play on words. I don't know how good that works. You would definitely lose out on some of the other faded type imagery, perhaps. But as a localization, I think that's pretty clever. Okay, so anyway, enough pedantry for now.
And the dragons witnessed that eclipse with their own eyes, again connecting them to the sun and the eclipse. Naturally, the eclipse was a disaster to the sun realm, as it blocked their power source and even drained it of its color. But we will come back to this later on. Now we need to address the elephant in the room, who will tie all of this together. Who was the god of the
That's a dragon. That's not an elephant.
sun realm? Over the past 2 years, we speculated heavily on the identity of the fled god of Placidusax, and in turn, the god of the sun realm. Judging by all manners of death found all over Farum Azula, people went to the conclusion that it was the Gloam Eyed Queen. Today, I will show you something that you probably never saw before. We are told that Placidusax is waiting for the return of his god. While waiting, he assumes this pose. Before the DLC, people thought he was making the same pose of the two fingers. But after the DLC, we know that the spiral is a widely used symbol for contacting the gods. If we put the spiral symbol beside Placidusax, we notice that the top of the pose is different. The spiral is symmetrical at the top, while Placidusax's two heads aren't. One stands taller than the other. This may seem like nothing at first, but if we put the sword of the Gloam Eyed Queen beside Placidusax, things take a turn. We can see here that the spiral of the weapon ends in a shape identical to the bows of Placidusax. So it's true that the Gloam Eyed Queen was his god. But here is a catch.
I feel like that's a little bit of a jump, although I definitely understand the rationale behind it.
This is only half the truth, as the Sun Realm was not a realm of death, but a realm of life and death, just like the sun itself. The sun dies every day at sunset, only to be reborn at dawn. The ancient dragons themselves were actually immortal, and most importantly, Farum Azula is filled with the illustrations of the twin bird. For the past 2 years, the twin birds have been a mystery, and most people attributed them to death. Again, this is only half the truth. The twin birds represent life
Wait, this is too many halves. We're getting into 3 halves now.
and death. In order to understand this, we need to dive deep into the meaning of the symbol. We can see here the twin birds as illustrated on their kite shield. The left bird is black while the bird on the right is red. This symbol can be traced back to alchemy. It's no secret now that Elden Ring is heavily influenced by alchemy. The main character of the game is actually a divine rebase, a union
Damn
of a
it, I
man,
hate this
woman,
word.
and a beast that controls the world. The main goal of alchemy is to perform the magnum opus, or the great work, which result in the divine rebase, a perfect dual being that can rule the world. The magnum opus can be illustrated in a lot of ways, but one of those ways involve using birds. The black crow representing death, and the red phoenix representing rebirth or life. We can see here the incredible similarity between all of those symbols, and judging by the main theme of the game, this indeed represents a rebus, a dual nature creature of life and death. The phoenix itself is incredibly important here, because the first people to mention the phoenix were ancient Egyptians. The phoenix was the bird of Ra, the sun god, and it was the main symbol in Heliopolis, the ancient Egyptian capital. Heliopolis was a name given to the capital by the Greek, and it means city of the sun. The phoenix itself represented the sun because, as I said, the sun dies every day at sunset only to be reborn at dawn. This is exactly what the twin birds in Faramazula represented, the cycle of life and death. It's all connected now. Faramazula is connected to
So like I've said before, I think on yesterday's stream, I don't really mind more metaphorical readings of the text, and trying to thematically tie the twin birds into the life, death, and rebirth of the sun is actually fine with me, even if it isn't something that I just will support 100% as like a super concrete reading of things here. So as far as like approaches go to things like this is generally a type of approach that I approve of.
To the sun realm, it's also connected to the twin birds, which in turn represent the sun. Now it's only logical to assume that the god of the sun realm wasn't just a god of death, but a god of life and death, just like the twin birds and the sun itself. The god of death was the Gloam Eyed Queen, but who was the god of life? Someone whose rune was named the Rune of Life in version 1.0 of the game. Someone we know is a dual nature rebus. Someone whose children are connected to destined death and snakes. Yes, Marica. It was Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen together. I believe the truth was in front of us this whole time. The truth was buried in Dominula village. Dominula village is one of the oldest mysteries.
Mendacious Cat called it. I mean, it was in the thumbnail, but also I wanted to make a bit of a joke.
I believe the truth was in Marica.
Hey guys, do y'all know of somebody else who has one purple eye and perhaps a faded golden one?
And the Gloam Eyed Queen together. I believe the truth was in front of us this whole time. The truth was buried in Dominula village. Dominula village is one of the oldest mysteries in Elden Ring, but after the DLC it got way more interesting. We got a new item called the Festive Grease, which states that the festival is an old tradition, one old enough for the Erdtree to tacitly tolerate its endurance. But Marica isn't really known for her tolerance. Why did she tolerate that one? Especially that it's connected with her rival, the Gloam Eyed Queen. We can find a godskin apostle on top of the village. Not just that, but we learn that the entire festival is revolving around skinning. The maidens in blue wear capes bearing the symbol found on the seven-faced aprons of the godskin nobles. Those maidens are called harvesters, connecting them even more to death. But again, following the theme of this video, thinking that the festival is about death is only half the truth. All around the Dominula village we can find the rune of Queen Marica, the rune called the Rune of Life. The maidens in blue aren't the only maidens in the village. We also got maidens in white. They were capes bearing the
Yellow.
symbol of the Erdtree, and in the internal files they are called gardeners, connecting them to life. If you analyze those maidens in white,
Well, I think even beyond that, he might get to this point later. The fact that the rune crucifixes, whatever you want to call them, are also garbed with flowers that are blooming could also represent spring and therefore like the budding of new life, perhaps. So there's always a bit of like reap what you sow, harvesty, replant what you've grown type stuff going on with these kind of agricultural festivities, for lack of a better term. Chuggistote, nice to see you again.
you will reach a stunning realization. They are mimicking Marica herself. Their hairstyle is identical to Marica's, with a long braid on the back and the right side, and a cut braid on the left side. There is no way that this is a coincidence. We learned from the DLC that Marica's cut braid is of great importance. So why do we have maidens connected to Marica and life, while other maidens are connected to the Gloam Eyed Queen and death? They are recreating an ancient tradition, a tradition involving their dual nature, god of life and death, a tradition involving Marica giving birth to demigods only for the Gloam Eyed Queen to kill and skin them. A fact I believe was celebrated on the seven-faced aprons of the Godskin nobles, the most ancient of the apostles. The Godskin noble robe is a very interesting piece of armor. It's iconic for the usage of real skin in making it, hence the name Godskin. But
Also, you definitely have to respect the Godskin nobles for having the bravery to hashtag free the nipple. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, by all means, stay in ignorance. Never look at the backside of the Godskin noble set.
if those robes are made of Godskin, who did the nobles kill to make it? Upon further investigating the robe, we can find more clues. The robe features 7 faces around the same symbol that appeared in Dominula village. 7 is a very interesting number, a number bearing great significance in various religions. But if we search Elden Ring using 2 keywords, 7 and gods, we will find something of incredible importance: the 7 walking mausoleums. We were told that those mausoleums hold the soulless demigods, the unwanted children of Queen Marica. So is it a coincidence that we have 7 dead demigods and 7 faces are featured on the robe of the god killers? Before we answer this, we need to clear a misconception in the lore community. Many people believe that the walking mausoleums hold demigods killed during the Night of the Black Knives. This is far from the truth. This misconception emerged from connecting those soulless demigods to Godwyn the Golden, therefore connecting their death to the Night of the Black Knives. But in matter of fact, Black Knives cannot produce a soulless demigod. That's not how Godwyn ended up like this. The only reason Godwyn the Golden is soulless is due to the fact that Ranni split the mark of death between both of them, killing her in body alone while killing Godwyn in soul. So if those soulless demigods were the result of the Night of the Black Knives, who performed the other 7 rituals? Certainly not Ranni. Even the architecture of the mausoleums disproved this theory, because the mausoleums share the same architecture with the Eternal Cities. We know that the assassins behind the
So before he gets too far, I wanted to bring up a few points. The reason why people would say that the soulless demigods and the mausoleums are related to Godwyn or connected to him in some way, if not directly, is because Godwyn is canonically called the first dead of the demigods. And if that is true, then how could there be dead / soulless demigods before him? And that brings its own set of issues, which would therefore imply that the earliest thing that these things could have died would have been on the Night of the Black Knives, aka the same time that Godwyn died. Maybe not like literally, but very shortly after. So anyway, that's kind of why people feel as though their hands are tied at that breakpoint. So if he's trying to challenge that, I mean, he's welcome to, but it's really difficult to ignore when something is stated so bluntly, even if it is very tempting to do otherwise. Also, This is an aside tangent here, but I can't stand the damn inside of these wandering mausoleums because none parts of it are symmetrical. Obviously, we have the camera angle to work with, but it's not centered.
The Night of the Black Knives were scions of the Eternal Cities. So why would the Golden Order collaborate with the Eternal Cities after they attacked their capital and killed their demigods? The DLC expands more on this subject by adding 3 coffins holding the remains of soulless demigods. Upon further investigation, we can find that the coffin's architecture differs greatly from the base game coffins.
Oh yeah, the other thing that I wanted to point out with like the whole argument of 7 faces of the demigods is that's fine, but gets a little bit awkward when you have the apostles, which have 7 faces on their armor, their set, whatever you want to call it, versus the nobles. So that's at the very least 14 demigods, unless they somehow reproduce the faces for their garments, which maybe, but that's kind of another hard sell in trying to say that those heads belonged to those of the soulless wandering mausoleum demigods.
The DLC ones have what I call finger architecture, and indeed we find 2 of those coffins at Finger Ruins, and the third can be found around Manos Meteor. But why do we find soulless demigods around the fingers? The fingers have always been very mysterious, and their motives are much more sinister than they look. You may think at first that they are connected to light, but this is only half the truth. Elden Ring is filled with a theme of duality, life and death, light and darkness. Especially after the DLC, it expanded so much on the concept of dual nature, and the fingers themselves are of dual nature, light and darkness. We got 2 variations of the 2 fingers prayer book. One is light and the other is darkness. The baleful shadows that haunt Rani are called the assassins of the 2 fingers. Interestingly, they use destined death. In matter of fact, fingers using the power of shadow to their advantage is even older than all of this. After the DLC and in the Shadowlands, we find sword hands of the night. Those sword hands are born and raised in a cold, dark jail deprived of light. Now what's really interesting is that their armor illustrates a fingerprint. A fact not just seen on the armor, but mentioned explicitly in the description. Those sword hands of night seems to have been created by the fingers, just like the assassins of the Round Table. So it seems the fingers have always used both light and darkness to their advantage. Now to the final nail to the coffin, the head of Meteor is very reminiscent of the Black Flame sigil. A logical thing, judging by the fact that the Gloam Eyed Queen was an Emberian chosen by the fingers. But they didn't just choose darkness, they chose both light and darkness. Light on top in the form of Marica, and in the darkness, there is a Gloam Eyed Queen to do their dirty work. Continuing on with the theme of light and darkness, there is something really interesting hidden in the Shadowlands. We can find in the Shadowlands a sword made of stone. This sword can change between light and darkness at certain altars. You may think that those swords are just a nod to King Arthur maybe, but in matter of fact, the stone-sheathed sword didn't first appear in the DLC, it was there all along. The sword monuments that we find all over the lands between are actually stone-sheathed swords, giving this sword a particular importance to the Golden Order, and indeed we can even trace those swords back to the fingers.
I think that's a pretty good observation. I don't know how relevant it's supposed to be, just because they do tend to reuse a lot of assets. I believe the stone sheath sword was in the quote-unquote cut files, which are kind of arguably not cut anymore in the base game. So anyway.
In my opinion, the altars we find those swords at actually doesn't fit with their surroundings at all. They seem of different architecture altogether. Also, the places we find them at seems disconnected from each other. But if we compare the patterns of the altars to the walls at the Finger Ruins, we find some similarity. And don't forget that the sword hands of night are agents of the two fingers. All of this connects the swords of light and darkness to the fingers, but they
So that horn says, what if Metter is the Gek and that's why the symbol is so fingerprint coded? Whatever. So to treat that kind of throwaway question a little bit more seriously, I think it's an enticing thought for a number of reasons. But if it were true, then it would certainly suck how unlike the Godskins any of her finger creepers are, or it would also suck that there are so few similarities between like the Godskin nobles and apostles, two finger creepers, or like the two fingers or anything like that. Hey Buster Suds, how's it going? Have I seen the videos on the Grand Unified Theory by Silent Ellipsis? No, I was probably going to watch at least one of those tomorrow, because I know people are definitely interested in that.
are also connected to someone else, Mesmer. The three places we can find the swords at actually shares a common factor. They are incredibly hidden, like someone doesn't want you to find them. The altar at the Fog Rift Catacomb, for instance, is incredibly hidden that I completely missed on my first playthrough. Not just that, but do you know who is connected to that catacomb? Mesmer himself. At the catacomb, we can find the spirit ashes of Commander Andreas. It reads as follows. Used to summon the spirit of Andreas, Knight Commander of the Black Knights. The Black Knights were the primary force of Mesmer's army. Their first leader was Andreas, a man endued with great strength and command over the powers of the Crucible, and whose spirit in these ashes dwells. Though he remained a devout follower of Mesmer after his flight from the Erdtree, he would rebel after learning of his serpentine nature. His righteous stand was rewarded with imprisonment in an underground tomb. Of course, the underground tomb was none other than the Fog Rift Catacomb itself. So just like Mesmer imprisoned Andreas there, he also hid the altar there. This becomes even more obvious if you look at another altar location. The altar.
So one thing that I looked into with the whole serpentine nature of that quote, because it just interested me, and I was wondering if it meant serpentine in a literal sense or a metaphorical one. It does mean it in a literal sense. So Andreas and his son found out that Mesmer himself was like a legitimate serpent as opposed to like a serpent-like person in terms of a personality and whatnot. Anyway.
In the ruins of Ante. This entire area can be accessed only through the Shadow Keep, and it's incredibly hidden. Not just that, but the ruins entrance itself is blocked by one of Mesmer's war machines. You need to figure out how to actually wake that Wicker Man up and kill it before accessing the altar behind it, which again points at the fact
Counterpoint, parkour. You can get in there like jumping up through this hole in the back by double jumping around with Torrent if you try hard enough.
That someone didn't want you to find those altars.
Because, you know, some people, not me at all, couldn't figure out how to get through the intended way.
The third location is at the ancient ruins of Ra, which again is blocked by the Shadow Keep. Someone wanted to hide the truth that those swords represented. This is no other than the common factor between all of these locations, Mesmer himself. Mesmer went to great effort to hide those swords from you, but why? I believe he was hiding the truth behind the old dual nature of his mother. The truth that those swords represent by changing back and forth between light and darkness, the primordial forms of gold and shadow.
Wait, so
now,
why
after
didn't...
we talked...
Did he bring up Rao? I mean, he kind of did, but did not. Wait, let me go back over here. So we're at 2014.
Darkness to the fingers, but they are also connected to someone else, Mesmer. Particular importance to the gold. In my opinion, the altars we find those swords at actually doesn't fit with their surroundings at all. They seem of different architecture altogether. Also, the places we find them at seems disconnected from each other. But if we compare the patterns of the altars to the walls at the Finger Ruins, we find some similarity. And
So 2014. Okay. So he thinks they're moved. I kind of forgot that.
After we talked about the duality between life and death and their connection to the fingers, it's easy to see now why the fingers would choose a god that can represent both, a dual nature god. But Marica didn't want this anymore. Remember the festival and the theme of gardeners representing Marica and harvesters representing the Gloam Eyed Queen? I think Marica didn't want her children to keep getting killed and skinned by her other half. We already know that dual-natured individuals have separate wills. We can even see this with Marica and Radagon. She shattered the ring while Radagon tried to fix it. I believe history repeats itself. Marica didn't want the festival to continue while the Gloam Eyed Queen was delighted. This pushed Marica to the brink and caused her to devise a plan to get rid of her other self, the Gloam Eyed Queen, forever. Not just that, but she wanted to remove the rune of death so she wouldn't lose any more children. And I believe that's why Marica was so broken after Godwyn the Golden died. We are told that the death of Godwyn was a catalyst to the shattering. The shattering was the breaking point of Marica, both metaphorically and literally. When we find her, she is literally broken. She broke because after all what she did to end the god hunt and remove the rune of death, she still lost her child. Now how exactly did Marica end the previous cycle of the Sun Realm? How did she defeat her other self and get rid of the Gloam Eyed Queen? I believe she did that through an eclipse, but not a normal eclipse. She used the Erdtree to eclipse the sun. My previous video and part 1 of this series was a video explaining how the Erdtree stole the power of the sun and drained its color. If you didn't watch it, you need to check it after this video. But you may ask a question, why an eclipse? Remember the rock heart item? We already established that it connected the eclipse to the dragons. This isn't the only thing connected to eclipses. There is another, destined death. We are told through the eclipse great shield that the eclipsed sun, drained of color, is a protective star of soulless demigods. It aids the Mausoleum Knights by keeping destined death at bay. So what does the phrase keep destined death at bay means? I believe it means that during an eclipse, death is powerless. This is incredibly important. If destined death is powerless at an eclipse, that means that the Gloam Eyed Queen and her apostles are powerless. Let's watch this alternative cutscene of releasing the Rune of Death.
So this is from Sekiro Doobie. So the unused take, you just fall down first?
Yes, this is an alternate cutscene which didn't make it to the final release of the game, but we can learn from it. The cutscene shows the Tarnished dying after merely touching the Rune of Death.
I don't know if that's death per se, or just a way to transition into waking up on the ashen floor of Ashen Lane Dell.
Which may give us some insight about what FromSoft had in mind for the Rune of Death. I watched this alternative cutscene long ago, and ever since I had a question in my mind. How exactly did Malicus manage to defeat the Gloam Eyed Queen? We aren't just talking about her army of apostles. We are also talking about possessing a power that can kill you with one touch. And I believe this is where the eclipse steps in. After Marica provoked the eclipse, the Gloam Eyed Queen was powerless, which allowed Maliketh to defeat her, split her from Marica, and kill her demigod children, the Apostles, earning him the name Death of the Demigods. I believe there is a lot of evidence proving this theory, but there is only one flaw, the timeline. How does all of this connect with what we saw in the story trailer?
Well, I'm hoping he goes into detail here rather than pushing it to the next video, because this has been something I've been wondering about his interpretation of events here, because it's hard to try to piece together and see whether or not these ideas are consistent dependent upon these timeline beliefs. So I've just kind of been idly biding my time away.
of Shadow of the Erdtree. What was the relation between Marika, the Gloam Eyed Queen, and the Horn Scent? This would connect really well with what we see Marika doing at the Gate of Divinity. It's long been speculated that the thing Marika pulls the golden threads from is connected to the god skins. So is that where Marika discarded the Gloam Eyed Queen and used her remains to ascend to godhood once more? This time as a goddess of life with no death, as Queen Marika, the Eternal. One possible explanation for the timeline problem would be time convolution. We already know that time is really messed up in Farum Azula. The biggest evidence regarding this is Malekith, an incredibly important person to the story of both Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen. We know that Malekith is Gurranq, but if we kill Gurranq, Malekith doesn't die and vice versa. What's really interesting is that if you completed Gurranq's quest, he disappears and then he recognizes you as Malekith. Also, the ancient dragon smithing stone talks about its capability of twisting time. So did Marica use some kind of time manipulation powers? We still need to continue on to discover the full story of Marica, and we will do that over time.
But so he doesn't really go into super deep specifics here. So this has come up quite a bit in the last couple of videos of the previous two streams. So in terms of the ancient dragon scale slightly twisting in time, another alternative interpretation could be that time as the characters experience it is in a bit of a standstill, and the reason why the ancient dragon scales might allow it to bend is that they might be reverting, not reversing, the flow of time into flowing more naturally. And so if you have an immortal demigod, are they immortal because of some property of themselves, or are they immortal because they cannot experience the effects of death because time doesn't exist for them? That is something that I've long wondered, and I think that might be part of the reason why Hugh needs to craft a certain kind of weapon that's capable of killing a god. It could be because time is frozen, so if you have a weapon which unfreezes time effectively, then it can kill that which remains frozen in time, perhaps. But, of course, that is also pretty heavy speculation on my part. So let me back this up a little bit and then attack it again.
Beers, and then he recognizes you as Malekith. Also, the ancient dragon smithing stone talks about its capability of twisting time. So did Marica use some kind of time manipulation powers? We still need to continue on to discover the full story of Marica, and we will do that over time, starting from the next year. Stay tuned, enjoy your holiday, and hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed, and tell me in the comment section what you think. Until next video, farewell, fellow tarnished.
Guys, good news, we have a holiday coming up apparently. So despite, wanting more answers, I did enjoy the video. Definitely some thought was put into the production of this. I don't necessarily agree with everything, like Mesmer moving the altars, for example. I'm perfectly fine with them being enigmatically where they are, even though I am a little bit annoyed with where they are, to be fair there. So Chadwick and Without Horns are joking about the angry sun god of Super Mario Bros. 3. So yeah, going back to that topic of the sun god and whatnot, and of course the sun's alleged connection to destined death. I've wondered whether or not destined death is therefore associated with the sun rather than like the black moon or the eclipsed moon, because isn't the implication that the sun is what leads to destined death if blocking the sun blocks destined death? Maybe. I've been on the fence on that one for a very long time. Did I read the article of Italian translator Mirko about how America betrayed the shamans to become God? No, honestly, I don't really like a lot of Mirko's work because I feel like he takes very, very specific interpretations of the text that I don't agree with, and he uses those as premises to build off other points, and it's not always clear the way he's doing that, and it leads to some problematic interpretations further on down the line. So we talked about that in one of the Discord discussions we had about this ages ago. Let me look it up. Apparently, I don't remember. I know I've definitely had my disagreements with him on a number of issues from like very specific readings about things. All right. Apparently, I don't remember like a good keyword to search up for it, unfortunately. The moon literally gets in the way of death. And of course, like the moon guides stars, which might be analogous to souls or like fate, because fate was with the stars to some degree, which is also partially why I had some disagreements, but I forgot how to articulate that thought, or didn't think to articulate that thought when watching Nameless Singer's video the other night. What else is I going to say? We talked about the sun. I think I have my notes on my screen, don't I? Marica, the Godskins, Gloam Eyed Queen, Shaman Village, Godhood, and the timing of everything. Right. So even though I am a fan of the idea of Marica being the Gloam Eyed Queen, a lot of problems I think which arise with that theory is if Marica is related to the Gloam Eyed Queen in the before times. Before times, in my estimation, are the times before Godfrey. I think things are a little bit simplified if the Gek exists up until Radagon appears and becomes Elden Lord, but I'm still uncertain about how I really think about the timeline. I don't necessarily think that Marica has to be the Gloam Eyed Queen, but unfortunately it does solve that problem of simplifying a lot of other things, which makes it a very attractive idea, even if it's a bit tiresome in its own right. Chungus said, if you look at the trees in Fair Missoula, there are the red leaf trees and trees drained of color, giving it an ashen one color. You can find the ash trees at the second ancient dragon path when you jump down. The draining of colors apply to dragon scales. So yes, in addition to that, you also have some similar types of effects going on with the foliage in the Lands Between itself. Wait, maybe Fair Missoula's trees are a little bit more red than what you get in Landell. So there are a couple of like super reddish trees over by the fortified manor as well in the lower section of Landell, but they aren't turned to like a grayish ashy color quite the same way. And I've definitely got screenshots of those. So give me a second here. So Fair Missoula does have like the reddish tinted brownish color of the trees as well as some green ones elsewhere, but let's see if we can't get one of those ashen boys. All right, here is the one tree next to the site of Grace, which has the reddish brown color in addition to like the more petrified gray stuff, which is pretty cool. Which is what Chungus is talking about there. So let's look up the fortified manor. That's okay. Here we go. And so these are the outer ramparts, and they seem to be of a similar color, but they're not quite turned to ash anywhere, surprisingly. Mortis, you found a second train station in Duskblood. The train lore is growing. I almost thought you were a Nightbot for a second telling me to sit up straight. And then I saw a Nightbot telling me to sit up straight. Yeah, I agree with you, Chadwick, that I definitely think FromSoft was very deliberate about stuff like that. Without horns, Chungus thinks that deathbed companions sleep with dragons. I think because of like Fia and Fortisax being accessible through Fia's dream, but I don't agree with that reading, if that's the right one. And I would also disagree that the skeletons fly like dragons do. They hover. It's different. They're like jetpack fueled with their black smoke barf. So, okay, that was a fun video. I definitely have some unresolved questions, but I mean, up until we watch that grand unified theory, I'm assuming that's going to keep happening. So let's go ahead and check out another video about Marica and the Gek with Zaith the Scholars. Marica's strange new connections to the Gloam Eyed Queen. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree lore theory and speculation video.
Shaman Village is easily one of the most captivating areas added in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. It's where Marica the...
Oh yeah, that was the point that I wanted to make. I did bring it up slightly, but I didn't expand upon it. So, Marica's connection to the Shaman Village makes any bigger connections to like Fair Missoula and the Gloam Eyed Queen, if the Gloam Eyed Queen is like a legitimate god, a little bit more suspect, because if the Hornsent were able to bully the shamans and the Gloam Eyed Queen was god, just like, how the hell did that happen that Marica would allow that to exist for so long? Of course, I mean, she may have had a retribution with the Crusade and stuff, but why could that have, like, how could it have ever gotten to that point on her watch? Maybe there's a reason for it that we don't know, but it just doesn't seem to ring true to me that the Gloam Eyed Queen as Marica fits well with the way that the shamans get bullied and the way that the Hornsents bullied them, if that makes sense.
The Eternal was born, and would later become a tragic memorial site for her people's persecution by the Hornsent. But what none of us could have guessed is that Shaman Village would lead to some strange revelations about an area we've all been to in the base game. And these ties might help us to figure out the identity of one of Elden Ring's most elusive characters, the Gloam Eyed Queen. I welcome you, Tarnished, to join me, Zaith the Scholar, as I try to tie together some strange new evidence from the DLC that closely ties Queen Marica the Eternal to the Gloam Eyed Queen. Let's talk about it.
The Gloam Eyed Shaman, Zaith the Scholar.
Zaith the Scholar here, and today we're revisiting the focus of the first YouTube video I ever made. And for my money, one of the creepiest locations in all of Elden Ring, Dominula Windmill Village. Out of all the interesting and lore-centric locations we have in the base game, I'm willing to bet nearly no one predicted the DLC would give us some additional lore about Dominula of all places. And yet here we are, found in the Altus Plateau not far from Lanedell. From a distance, Dominula looks almost idyllic. A small hillen village covered in beautiful pink and purple flowers and windmills. It almost looks like a pastoral painting, until you take a closer look. Because when you do, you'll find that Dominula is the site of a strange all-female cult that is partaking in a ritual that involves skinning their victims. Or as we learn from a stranded
Hey, let girls have fun.
spirit in the village. I hear a festive melody. No, don't skin me. My hide is filthy, I swear. And things only get creepier from here. The village inhabitants, for example, referred to as celebrants, have a very strange zombie-like appearance, are wearing blood-soaked clothing, and are either engaged in enraptured laughter and dancing, or creepily rubbing their face on things. And it gets even stranger, because at the top of the village, for some reason we find a Godskin apostle. Now, as you may already know, the Gloam Eyed Queen isn't a character we're ever directly shown in Elden Ring. But the Godskins who we encounter at numerous points throughout our journey have deep ties to her, from which we can glean lots of useful information. Perhaps most significant is the Godskin incantation Black Flame ritual, which tells us that the Gloam Eyed Queen led the apostles and was an Empyrean chosen by the Fingers. Out of all of Elden Ring's text, there are only 4 characters referred to as Empyreans: Lunar Princess Ranni, the twins Miquella the Unalloyed and Malenia the Severed, and finally Queen Marica herself. So the Gloam Eyed Queen being labeled an Empyrean automatically makes her a character of great significance.
So that would be 5 if you include the Gek, obviously.
And this is only amplified when you learn that she possessed
Although that is only hearsay.
a black flame capable of slaying gods. A flame that she would share with the Godskin apostles, who channeled its power through her Godslayer's greatsword. But we also learn from in-game sources that the Gloam Eyed Queen was more than just a god killer. The Godskin Swaddling Cloth, for example, paints a picture of the Gloam Eyed Queen as a maternal figure, who cradled newborn apostles who would soon grow to become the death of the gods. The incantation Black Flame's Protection, meanwhile, further paints a picture of her as a motherly protector, stating that the apostles were all embraced by the Gloam Eyed Queen, and the Black Flame was their armor within. And so, on top of being an Empyrean, who also possessed the power to kill gods, she was lovingly raising a following who could wield this power as well, until she was defeated by Marica's shadowbound beast, Malekith. Now, importantly, we aren't told why Malekith defeated the Gloam Eyed Queen, nor are we told what happened to her in the aftermath. Both the English and the Japanese text leave her fate vague by saying she was simply defeated rather than killed. It does seem safe to say, though, that Malekith was likely acting on orders from Marica, thus forming an important link between these two queens.
I also do like the idea that Malekith could be, or could have gone berserk as a byproduct of Marica betraying the Fingers, but of course, that is super heavy speculation.
And in Dominula, we find evidence to further suggest connections between Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen. For one thing, the flower-adorned crosses throughout the village are in the shape of Marica's seal, quite similar to the stakes of Marica we see throughout the game, as well as the same mark present on Marica's rune and sword seal.
Yeah, so it does bother me that we don't have any of these kinds of crucifixes anywhere in the Shadowlands.
Looking more closely, we can also see that many of the celebrants wear yellow capes bearing symbols.
Like, did these things only get cropped up in, or propped up in the lands between after the Crusade? It's weird that there's like virtually nothing in the Shadowlands that is visually connected to what you get in the base game. It's a little bit infuriating.
Of the Erdtree. But puzzlingly, as pointed out by Reddit user Here's the Wolfman, other villagers wear blue capes that have the same symbols as those found on the seven-faced aprons of the Godskin nobles. The blue festive garb description reads, "Use of this garb, dyed in a stunning blue, is only permitted for the young maids who play a central role in the festival." And again, this is a festival that seems to revolve around skinning people and a Godskin noble who lives at the top of the village. So, why would these villagers celebrate both Marica, a figure who symbolizes life and light, and her diametric opposite, the Gloam Eyed Queen, who symbolizes death and darkness? And if that wasn't perplexing enough, thanks to some revelations in the DLC, Dominula becomes even more interesting, because we can draw multiple parallels between Dominula and Shaman Village. To get the most obvious connection out of the way, both villages are covered in beautiful, colorful flowers, which suggests they held some sort of cultural significance to their inhabitants. This may not seem like the strongest connection.
This music reminds me of like the Harry Potter / Voldemort theme.
But to my knowledge, the Hinterland and Dominula are the only places with such a strong floral theme, and they both immediately stand out when you visit them for that reason.
Because Voldemort's
Next
a
is
snake.
the fact that Shaman Village seems to have likely been a matriarchal and potentially all-female society. The grandmother we find at the top of the village and Marica are both female, as are all of the shaman we find within jars throughout the DLC. It's also perhaps worth mentioning that in the Japanese version of the game, shaman are referred to as Miko, which is a designation typically reserved for female shrine maidens or priestesses. Although it is worth mentioning that Miyazaki did deliberately use non-standard kanji for this word that makes the gender more ambiguous. So take that with a grain of salt.
For what it's worth, when I did do some research into that, even though the child character is a little bit more non-gendered on the face of things, it still carries the connotation that Amiko is a female to some degree.
Now, aside
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we have like historical context withstanding that, and how it's taken today could have been different in the past, and maybe Miyazaki's making more of an anachronism than anything. Who knows?
from the godskin at the village summit, all of Dominula's celebrants are also female. And things get even more interesting when we observe their hairstyles, which have newly found significance thanks to revelations in the DLC. We of course end up learning that Marica's iconic single-braided look was actually the result of her cutting one of her golden braids and leaving it as a tribute to the grandmother of Shaman Village. Is it purely coincidental that the villagers in Dominula also braid their hair so that, like Marica, they have one braid on their right side?
It's also really hard to tell this from looking at it, but even this lady has a hair braid on her right side, but is missing one on her left. I have wondered whether or not this is supposed to be an effigy of Marica, but I don't know. Like, I mean, the other one is decapitated, and we get the "Oh Mother" gesture next to it, so it seems like it very well could be, but that just comes down to individual preference there. Chungus asks, is the betrayal destroying the Dragon Kingdom? The DLC has America's betrayal against the Hornsent. The DLCs tend to re-explain base games. Mesmer abandoned at the Shadowlands. Malekith abandoned at Farum Azula. I don't think so, because it seems as though there should have been some kind of disconnect between the Hornsent Kingdom and the Dragon one. So there might be a possibility that the Hornsent were allied with the dragons to some degree, or maybe even their vassals. But if so, it's quite baffling that we have virtually no iconography that's shared in common between them, and like no dragon worship. Especially when you compare the Hornsent to other cultures like those of the Banished Knights, which have like dragons on their helms, or even the Beast Men of Farum Azula having like dragon statues in their locations. So like the only really big overlap, I think, between all of the cultures in the game is like the quote-unquote Chloranthy Chrysanthemum Imperial Seal of Japan type design, which you get in Leyndell, in like the Erdtree Sanctuary. You also see it in Farum Azula on the path to the dragon that, has lightning. That's not very helpful. The path with all the Stormbirds. Then you also get it in the Dancing Lions arena as well. Although in the Dancing Lion amphitheater, that one is notably embellished with gold and like paint, which is very distinct from the other forms of it that we see. The Shaman Grand Marica, exactly.
Also braid their hair so that, like Marica, they have one braid on their right side. They do also have a long braid in the back, so it doesn't seem to be a perfect match to Marica, but in any case, along with the flowers, the practice of hair braiding is another cultural tie to Shaman Village, and the grandmother of Shaman Village is also depicted with braids. So in sum, the evidence seems to suggest that the Dominula villagers have some ties to the shaman, and that for some reason they partake in a festival that celebrates symbols of both Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen. But why would Marica allow by what all accounts should be a blasphemous festival to be celebrated so near to Leyndell and the Erdtree? Well, a new item from the DLC provides us with some insight here. The description of the festive Greece states,
I keep forgetting to bring this up, like the whole rune aspect of the Greece. Anyway.
solidified knot grease made from a mixture of bone shards, coats armament imparting a festive incantation that grants the wielder a scant few runes on landing attacks. The delightful festival is an old tradition, one old enough for the Erdtree to tacitly tolerate its endurance. So first off, how can we even know that this grease refers to the festival in Dominula? Well, for one thing, in both the English and Japanese texts, the word festive or shukusai is used, and this word only appears otherwise in descriptions relating to the items found in Dominula. Next is the fact that the effect of granting the wielder runes upon landing attacks is the same as the effects of the weapons wielded by Dominula's celebrants.
Yes.
And finally, the illustration of the grease itself also shows that it is covered in flowers like those found in Dominula. I therefore think it's a pretty safe bet to assume that the festive grease is referring to Dominula's festival.
And even if it isn't, it has enough thematic connections that you'd be able to tie the Dominulan practices into that other festival.
And if we accept its description at face value, this celebratory festival of both Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen is something that Marica allowed to happen in her backyard because of how ancient a tradition it was. But is that really all? I mean, Marica isn't exactly known for her tolerance of ancient traditions and letting blasphemous symbols stay out in the open. She did hide both Mesmer and the entire ancient Hornsen civilization under a giant veil, after all.
And in addition to that, she essentially imprisoned literally all of the nomadic merchants on suspicion of blasphemy. So that's kind of a pretty big point in Zafe's favor here.
I think the evidence that I've shown so far makes it safe to assume that the Gloam Eyed Queen, Marica, and the Shaman are all somehow connected. So I'm going to throw out what I see as the two likeliest possibilities here.
And then Chadwick brings up a good point that whatever the festive goers are doing may not be an affront to Marica's literal power. I do think that they probably detract from her modus operandi slightly, but we'll probably get into that more later on in the video. And then, hey, El Degusto, how's it going? You're just hearing about Duskblood Nintendo Jaculars? Exactly. I did not have that on my bingo card, I can tell you that much. I was shocked when that trailer released. I legitimately thought it was like Devil May Cry at first. And then I saw the FromSoft logo and I was like, what the?
Either the Gloam Eyed Queen was an Empyrean from Shaman Village who had a rivalry with Marica during her ascension, or the Gloam Eyed Queen was, in fact, once part of Marica that was cast out. But is there actually any evidence that suggests Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen were once one? The most compelling evidence in my mind is the existence of Melina and Mesmer. We learn in the DLC that Mesmer was born cursed by dark flames and an abyssal serpent, and we also know that the Gloam Eyed Queen and the Godskin are tied to flames and serpents. Godskin nobles, for example, have snake-like tails, and according to their set...
That's actually a snail-like tail? Actually, I don't know, because the snails are snake-like themselves, so I'm just goofing.
Nobles are the most ancient apostles who are said to have assimilated in human physiology, not unlike the Crucible, the Erdtree in its primordial form. And I'll also mention here that many people have observed that Mesmer's lanky physique is quite reminiscent of the Godskin apostles. It's also strongly
Look at that scoliosis gamer pose there, though.
Suggested in the DLC that Melina is likely Mesmer's younger sister. And we know from the base game that she is also tied to fire and the Gloam Eyed Queen, or at the very least to destined death.
Yeah, that's been something that I've been reconsidering. I mean, not like reconsidering as in like rethinking, just like, well, damn it, that's literally what I meant. But re-examining is just the idea of how Melina should be directly connected to destined death, because the one who walks alongside Flame will go down, meet the path of destined death, whatever she says. So that's very weird, but I mean, obviously Melina's connection to destined death and her Gloam Eye, as Ratatosker would love us all to say, is very intriguing. Vorb, you have scoliosis? My condolences, man. It's terrible. Hopefully
Lord
it can
of
get corrected.
frenzied flame. I will seek you as far as you may travel. To deliver you what is yours.
Oh, hey guys, I just thought of like the foolproof, bulletproof way to explain to everybody how Melina is factually the Gloam Eyed Queen. No bamboozles, although still disappointment. Do you know what happens in the Frenzied Flame ending? Rhetorical. Marica dies, and if Marica was the queen and all we have left is a little pretty princess, would she still be a pretty princess, or does she become the de facto queen? Wait a second. Queen Melina has a Gloam Eye. She is a Gloam Eyed Queen. Got him. You have the spine to take that joke? I appreciate that.
On top of that, there's also some evidence that actually ties Melina to Dominula specifically. The flightless bird painting is said to depict the landscape scene during the last moments of those welcomed into death's embrace. The soul of the painter and vestiges of the dead's last moments can be discovered by visiting the location depicted even now. If we go to the scene depicted in the painting, we find ourselves back in Dominula Windmill Village, where we find the incantation Fire's Deadly Sin. Its description states, incantation originating from a deeply ominous prophecy.
Didn't somebody, I think this came up in the Discord, or maybe it was one of the videos we watched the other day. Wasn't Fire's Deadly Sin actually supposed to be in a different location? Okay, Greedy said, I remember reading somewhere that it's a mistake and quote-unquote flightless bird is supposed to be for the painting in Limgrave that gives the Stormhawk ashes, and the Fire's Deadly Sin painting is supposed to be called Prophecy, and they just never fixed the mix-up. Okay. Hold on, let's go back to this.
Where we find the incantation Fire's even now. Death's embrace. The soul of the painter.
Damn it. Gonna go back even further.
On top of that, there's also some evidence that actually ties Melina to Dominula specifically. The flightless bird painting is said to
So this should be the prophecy painting, according to this line of thought, which is acceptable headcanon to me because it makes the game simpler. Even if it might be factually inaccurate, sometimes it's more precious to hang on to things which disagree with what your eyes and ears tell you. And yeah, I said it. So I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek about that.
depict the landscape scene during the last moments of those welcomed into death's embrace. The soul of the painter and vestiges of the dead's last moments can be discovered by visiting the location depicted even now. If we go to the scene depicted in the painting, we find ourselves back in Dominula Windmill Village.
I forgot that he was in Dominula. Wait, isn't he kind of out of it technically? Yeah, I think he is. Like, this is too far south.
Where we find the incantation, Fire's Deadly Sin.
No, if the gate's over there. Maybe it is still in Dominula. Like, so is the shack like back here off screen?
States, incantation originating from a deeply ominous prophecy. Sets both the caster and the surrounding area ablaze with raging flames. The caster's body will remain engulfed in flame for a while, burning them and any who draw near. The prophet despaired, looking up at the Erdtree, for soon the kindling would burst into flame, bringing ruin.
That would definitely make sense with a quote-unquote prophecy painting.
The burning of the Erdtree is
Yeah, man, it's all coming together.
the first cardinal sin. That is not the domain of mere men.
And I brought this up as a question posed to the Discord earlier. If burning the Erdtree is the first cardinal sin, and Mesmer was left with the quote-unquote original sin, like the beginning sin, how do you square those two ideas together? And then I just left it open-ended to antagonize the entire chat. And Jack Irish, welcome back in.
Considering that, like Mesmer, Melina is said to have bore visions of fire, and that Melina describes herself as burned and bodiless, it seems fair to assume that this spell found in Dominula refers to her. And so now Dominula isn't linked only to the Gloam Eyed Queen, Marica, and Shaman Village, but also to Melina and by extension to Mesmer. Now, it doesn't seem to make sense for timeline reasons that Melina herself is the Gloam Eyed Queen, nor would that explain Mesmer's afflictions. And
Unless Melina is to Gek as Trina is to Mick.
I also feel like the motherly descriptions of the Gloam Eyed Queen don't match up particularly well with Melina.
To be fair, Melina does cry and ask us for births to continue in the lands between because she got those maternal instincts apparently. But I kind of agree though that I don't really get a lot of Godskin vibes from Melina specifically, but of course that might just be partially because Melina isn't fully herself, perhaps. All right, thank you, Mortis. Mendacious said, cardinal sins are kind of a Catholic thing. It's more of the worst sin in Marica's regime and not in the first son chronologically. No, so we've already discussed this ad nauseum in the Discord. So the reason why they presumably called it cardinal sin is because tsumi just means sin in Japanese, or when it's used in a compound word, it becomes zai. And in this case, it's called the Hajimari no Taizai. So Hajimari means like beginning. No is a particle. It's used as a function of speech. And then Taizai is like literally big, great sin. So we don't really have a word for great sin in English. So they probably localized it as cardinal sin to try to keep that idea. So it's kind of like one of the woes of trying to avoid specific nomenclature, or just kind of working with not the fullest understanding of what connotations are associated with certain words or set phrases. And that's just it's kind of like one of the most interesting things about translating from one language to another is getting the opportunity to learn more about your own mother tongue that you didn't know. So like I unironically have the thesaurus on my like quick bar just because it's really easy to like get a feel of a word but not be able to like translate it directly into your target language. And sometimes it's like you just need that little bit of a guidance with the thesaurus. And then of course, one of the biggest dangers is like not being able to fully capture the context of something in the original, or introducing unnecessary context in the target language because of other baggage in that language, which has nothing to do with the original source material. Chungus, you think she's the Gek at this point with terrible amnesia? Well, she does say that she's burned and bodiless and she doesn't know why. So she does definitely have amnesia, at least Melina does. So her having the dust guy and the dialogue at the Frenzied Flame ending confirms it for you? It's a very silly qualifier, but you don't mind. All right, cool, Mortis. I am interested in that.
But could the Gloam Eyed Queen instead have at one point been an aspect of Mother Marica that she had to cast out in order to create the Golden Order? It certainly wouldn't be the only instance we know of Marica separating a part of herself. And we know from looking at the Jarred Shaman that the Hornsense ritual involved blending many entities together, not just two. I can't help but wonder if before the birth of Gold, if Marica was instead claiming to stand for the Crucible, wielding a spiral greatsword, not unlike the iconography we find around Ener Ilim, and backed by an army of apostles who blended with serpents.
Definitely sucks that we don't have any Godskin iconography or even soldiers or whatnot in the DLC, doesn't it?
Even Marica's bracelets seem to have a snake-like motif. As worshippers of the Crucible, it would make sense that the Hornsent would back such an Empyrean's ascension to godhood.
It does also bother me that the Black Flame monks turned away from the Fire monks, and that therefore like the Black Flame camp didn't precede the Fire monk camp to some degree, if the Marica Gloam Eyed Queen connection is there, because they would essentially just kind of be what's the word? announcing their support for their liege with like the Gloam Eyed Queen / Marica. Although I guess you could argue that the Gek was already defeated by that point, but who knows?
However, as we learn from the story trailer, the Grace of Gold was born from a seduction and a betrayal. So were the Hornsent therefore seduced by the idea of a crucible-adhering Gloam Eyed Queen, only to be betrayed? Could this scene of Marica reaching into this godskin-like white flesh and pulling out gold actually be depicting the moment the Gloam Eyed Queen was cast out? My friend Tim Diggity makes a very similar claim in this video in the card, and points out many more interesting connections between the Gloam Eyed Queen and serpents, so I highly recommend you go and check that out if you haven't.
Yeah, it's been a while since we looked at Tim Diggity's video, so maybe I should add that to the list then.
In any case, I think Marica allowing a festival celebrating the Gloam Eyed Queen to happen so near to Leyndell is very telling. At the very least, I think it suggests that Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen were both from Shaman Village. But maybe it goes deeper than that. Maybe what's happening at Dominula isn't just an ancient festival that involves skinning, but one that celebrates Marica shedding her serpent skin and getting revenge against the Hornsent before passing through their holy gate. And while we're on the subject of shedding skin, many have pointed out that in Bonnie Village, one of the areas where the shaman were rounded up and persecuted, we can find a giant shed snakeskin next to a statue of Marica, where we receive the "O Mother" gesture.
So he does think that one is specifically Marica, the headless one.
Could this perhaps be a remnant of when the Gloam Eyed Queen and Marica were still one? I'd also like to mention that, as pointed out by Reddit user Lord Geiseric, the pose of Marica's statue in the base game invokes the shape of Marica's rune, while the pose of the statues throughout the Land of Shadow seem to invoke the shape of the Rune of Death.
I don't know if I would agree with that, because I feel like palm up doesn't match this personally. Like if it was palm down, almost like a Golden Order totality, but just like, you know, curved instead, I would be more inclined to agree with it. I do have some really wild tinfoil theories about Marica's rune and the Rune of Death in general that I'll probably share after the end of the video.
I wonder if this could be because the statues in the Land of Shadow were made before Marica was separated from the Gloam Eyed Queen. But what do you guys think? Is this all too much of a reach? Can you think of any other reasons why Marica would allow Dominula's festival, and what seems to be an open embrace of the Gloam Eyed Queen, to happen so close to her home in the capital? Why do the villagers of Dominula, who seem tied to the shaman, celebrate the Gloam Eyed Queen to begin with? Was the Gloam Eyed Queen once part of Marica? Or perhaps just another shaman that Marica betrayed? If she wasn't...
So Dominula and that practice of getting runes from like killing or flaying things or striking things could be thematically relevant to perhaps how Marica gained control of the Elden Ring, especially depending on how one feels about that cinematic DLC trailer with her getting gold from all the corpses and stuff, which all seem to actually be flayed alive. Maybe that's a way that you do it. Like gold comes from the inside and can be repurposed into runes, or like from death, one comes into contact with runes, gains like preternatural, supernatural powers from beyond the grave, like eternal power of life because of golden runes and whatnot.
Part of Marica are Mesmer and Melena's serpent and fire afflictions purely coincidental? I definitely don't think I came up with a perfect theory by any means, but I do at least hope that I brought together some interesting connections for you all to think about, and maybe do some cooking of your own. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. It really helps out my channel a lot, and I genuinely appreciate it. And hey, I'd also appreciate it if you considered supporting my work by becoming a patron, a YouTube member, or buying me a coffee. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh yeah, so that was a good video. I've gone ahead and linked it for you guys in the chat if you want to give Zafe some support. I enjoyed it. So to go into big old tinfoil land here, I think I need my footage of this. What did I call it? Well, no, what I could. Oh, I think I know. All right, so I do think there might be a kind of duality between Marica's rune and the rune of Destined Death. Although I'm not entirely, what's the word, pleased with this interpretation or theory that I'm about to offer you guys. So take it with a big old grain of salt is what I should preface this with. Rune of Death. Oh, I saved this as an image. Okay, I'll need to remember that for the future. Anyway, so obviously, this is the rod, our good old Rune of Death. So what happens when we flip it around? Hey, it's a sword! Well, maybe, but maybe we should actually be flipping it a different kind of way. Can I invert it? Not like this. So this is why we need to be able to open things with paint. .3D. What did I just do? There. I must have accidentally clicked minimize. So if we invert this by flipping it vertically, okay, it's the same thing. That's not what I meant. No, maybe it's the same. Anyway, you don't get like this part of the thing to stay at the top. It'll always be like oriented downwards, which is kind of problematic, and I'll explain this in more detail in a second here. So I was wondering if you inverted the Rune of Death, would that essentially give you the Rune of Life? And part of my rationale for that comes from Algies and Ear. Sweet. When you actually look at the legitimate runes in Norse mythology, the Algies rune, the Rune of Life, is kind of somewhat reminiscent of Marica's rune, the one that looks like the YMCA pose, or Solaire, Praise the Sun pose. And Yer, the Rune of Death, is literally the Rune of Life, but it's inverted. So this is just like whatever on its own, not really relevant. But I noticed something when getting footage for the Elden Beast at one point. Hey guys, look, he's doing his Waves of Gold attack. Wait a second. Why is this pointed towards him? This isn't how you make the Litany of Proper Death Incarnation of Order pose. This should be coming from the opposite direction. So I was like, wait a second. This is inverted. Why is this inverted? Does this show like that the Elden Beast is the counterpart, the inverted form of Radagon or something like that? So let me pull up Litany just to show you guys. I think this one will work. I was listening to stuff while getting music, or well, getting footage that time. All right, so we should be good here. All right, see, now we have the pose coming from the user, and that is inverted with the Elden Beast. So I was like, wait a second. Could that apply to the Rune of Destined Death or anything as well? Is it like broken in half? Anyway, so if Marica's rune is the Rune of Life, and if you literally invert the Rune of Life with Norse mythology type runes, and that becomes the Rune of Death, then does inverting Marica's rune produce the Rune of Destined Death? And then could that also play into the quote-unquote duality between Marica and the Gloam Eyed Queen if they were actually related? So, of course, I don't think it really works based off of how the arc of Destined Death works when you flip it upside down. Yeah, emanating from versus returning to. Yeah, so hopefully that made sense to you guys. So that'll kind of be it for the lore videos for tonight, but I do want to look at the Duskbloods video because it's really short again and it's cool at least one more time. Chadwick said maybe we are upside down or backwards. Oh yeah, that's what I meant to bring up. So Part of the reason why that idea is also more attractive to me is because of the crucified people on all of the Marica statues. They kind of like the inverted form of what you get with the hanged men in Bloodborne. So it seems like a similar idea repurposed in a different kind of way, coming from like multiple angles. Now that doesn't prove anything, but it's just very evocative to me. So let's go into the Bloodborne hanged. For those who don't have a PlayStation console to understand what the hell I'm talking about, the Hanged Man shows up in Bloodborne, although it kind of gets repurposed over time. So you could definitely tell by the types of graves and tombstones that these things appear on that this is a very old style grave, and this kind of corresponds to the pose of the Hanged Man in tarot, as well as in some crucified type folk in Hemwick Charnel Lane. Then you get to see it look more like a skeleton, and you get a decapitated guy here, and presumably like the runes are coming out of him with like the blood. The runes are in the blood, which in this case they're blood echoes, not runes specifically. These are runes. And we have a like a more refined image of the hunter's mark, although this one has a head. This one still kind of has a head, and then even more refined. So what happens when we flip it? Oh no, it's Marica's rune. It's the algaes. So the rune of death essentially becomes the rune of life when it gets inverted. So there's some other stuff in Bloodborne which could suggest that you're like upside down, because like Mikolash says Ram is an upside down spider and you have to go through water to get to her, and like the water relates to the dream. And a lot of that imagery is also present in Elden Ring with like the oracle bubbles and fate in the stars and the cosmos being kind of just above your heads and stuff like that. So that ties into Chadwick's saying maybe we are upside down or backwards. We might be. And then Chadwick, you always thought of the runes from Bloodborne as being reflected off the surface of water. You can't see the thing, only its reflection. That's an interesting idea. So let's go ahead and check out that new Bloodborne 2 video, Duskbloods. Oh, Bloodborne 2, I meant Switch 2. Totally. We're gonna call it Switchborne? Oh no.
I give you my blood. I give you my life. Turn, O wheel, and transport him to a night of moonlight, to humanity's very dusk.
Wonder if that's supposed to be like a 3D imprint of the blood. Like, does the blood seep in from the center? I mean, you're a Dracula, Harry. Okay. Trains. There you go, Mortis. Honestly, those trains kind of remind me of Final Fantasy VIII. This looks like it's repurposed from Elden Ring. Well, I mean, the whole area kind of does, but the sarcophagus type dais? Let's look back at the sky here. So it definitely extends beyond... Are they upside down? Maybe they are. Bro, the character design is so cool. I know I've said this like 4 times already. There we go. Vampires! Hey guys, look, it's the Chungus Toad himself! Why didn't you tell us you were in the game? They got beards? Or is that just the thing?
Close your eyes and
Come on, YouTubes.
contemplate now the moon, as befits the soon to depart.
I pray that you are able, carrier of blood.
Wait, did we get to see their eyes that time? So they seem to be like covered with like black, red pus type things? Or they have like multiple red pupil-y type things? Like spider eyes. Almost like, they remind me of like the Winter Lantern spider orb eye things. Hey, John Paul Cocker, nice to see you again. Check out that Doulahan, but backwards. Lady Maria herself. I mean, Lady Mary herself. It's an Allosaur. We're playing Turok. Wait, it has feathers. As well as spikes. So maybe these are all spikes. So this is the train station Mortis. Wait, what is that? Oh, that's a lamp. Just the silhouette at the top kind of made me think it was like a floating person, like hovering. Visual distortions there. Caskets. I wonder if this is where Balenciaga and the summon walked in later, or earlier, whatever it was.
The moon tears will flow for one, and one alone.
The Dusk Bloods. That's pretty hype. Except for the price points. Oof, 2026. Zoink Scoob. Okay, folks, that'll be it for tonight's stream. As always, I want to thank you all for joining me. We'll be going live at the normal time again of 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.